Hey everybody, Foddy, Rob Stone is here. He's just up getting on his computer, kind of thing. So he will join us momentarily.
I love that you started with the
But
wrong
yeah,
name. That was great.
well, actually, me and Dominic both recorded this week uh with Foddy. Dom recorded on Thursday, and I recorded a couple hours ago with Foddy. So that's why he's on my mind. But no, Foddy is definitely not Rob Stone or Bob Rock. So yeah, that should be awesome. Dominic, anything new with you this week?
Anything new with me? Well, for all the people who say they wish they lived in Canada, I just snowblowed a foot of snow on my driveway, so it sucks. And my snowblower broke halfway through and is stuck in fifth gear. So that just means it goes really, really fast. And when the snow is really deep and heavy, you can't go fast away. It was a fun time. Snake related, I got reached out by two people this week, and one of them actually was while doing the Fatty podcast, and it was freaking hilarious. He goes, so I got a new Bredley Python. He's all happy about it, right? He's like, it's really cool and all that. And he's like, yeah, I bought it from this guy, which I will not say the name. And he's like, apparently it was produced by you. I'm like, oh, produced by me. I'm like, cool. But I've never produced Bredleys. So then I'm like, maybe it's from Shan because our snakes are often together and we often sell shit together. And I'm like, oh, show it to me. And it's like a 3 foot, 3.5 foot snake. I'm like, yeah, Shan produced them for the first time this year. They're maybe 12 inches long, maybe 14 inches. So I'm like, I don't know whose snake that is, but it's not from me or it's not from him. So that was the first event. And then the second event was some random dude from the States just messages me and he's like, hey, I just bought this jungle carpet, really nice. It's I don't know, a pure jungle favela line zebra ocelot. Shows me pictures. I'm like, that thing's pretty nice. It looks nice. And he's like, yeah, apparently it was produced by you. I'm like, oh, really? Like, cool. Who told you that? And he's like, oh, this guy, this guy. And I'm like, the thing is, I've never sent snakes to the States, and sending snakes to the States from Canada is really, really tough. And I'm like, the only person I know that's got my stuff that I've given a lot of stuff or traded was Don. And Don might have sent some stuff. And then I reach out to Don. He's like, yeah, I've never sent any carpets in the longest time. So I don't know. Two people impersonated having my animals this week. So I don't know. Maybe that's a good sign or a bad sign. It means maybe I'm starting to be known by over three or maybe four people. But yeah, that's what's new with my week. Except for that, animals are good. Yeah. Sorry, Mike.
That's a pretty good story. uh,
Yeah.
being impersonated.
I love it. Animal wise, I mean, I stopped feeding about a week ago. All the animals are taking their last poop this week and last week. And it's kind of starting to slow down in the room. I love it. Cool down's going to obviously start in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to that. But that's about what's new with me. What about you, Michael? Anything new?
Not too much. Oh, all four Trans-Pecos rat snake babies are now on to frozen thawed. So a couple were on live. They're now all on frozen. They're all doing good. I think I might actually let a couple of them go, but it's hard to choose because it's like 1.3. So it's like I could maybe use an extra female or two, but then I find with that stuff, it's almost easier just to stick with like one male per female, and you just leave that male in for the breeding season and keep it simple. Like last year, I tried stretching the male on two, and like maybe that was too much, but I don't know. One of the females did have 4 good eggs, so well, maybe try that once again this year, and if it doesn't work out again, then I'll just stick with the 1.1. But yeah, I'll probably let one of those go. Still have one pair of Kentuckys left. And then, yeah, I got 2 weeks into no food with the colubrid stuff, so I'm another week and a half away from maybe putting the pines and the black milks outside, and then I'll maybe wait another week or two after that to put the Trans-Pecos down. I think this year I'm only going to put them down for about 2 months kind of thing, and then fast them a little bit, and then start feeding them again when I bring them out a little earlier than the Kentuckys. So yeah, not too much. I think this upcoming week on Wednesday, since Tuesday's a holiday, I'm gonna send a box out to my buddy full of Sambos because I don't need to try to sell those. So wholesaling is the way to go with some of this stuff. But yeah,
100% agree on wholesaling.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think I'm the guy to sell sand boas across Canada. It'd probably be fine, but that's a lot of babies to sell to mostly people that are going to kick tires most of the time. But yeah, tonight we got our guest Rob Stone, the NPR backup guy, along with Reptile Fight Club, and I think we've all heard him on podcasts for the last 15 years. Actually, I think what is it like last winter? I went back and listened to your first NPR episode, and it's really funny how like your collection's totally changed since then because that's when you were still keeping diones and whatnot. So that was cool to see. But yeah, Rob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, super excited to be here, listen to you guys' show. Really enjoy it. As you say, I've been on a bunch of different shows and things, but I think um, certainly the different hosts bring out different questions and things. I was just recording last week with, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, with Adam, who has the Expert and the Idiot. And, there were definitely things that we wound up talking about that I haven't spoken about explicitly or if at all. So I'm excited for whatever those may be tonight. We all have our greatest hits, but excited to always see something new too.
Oh yeah, I always find it interesting to because when you hear certain guests talk, you're like, I wish he said something more about this, or even just hearing, like you say, different interviewers, the way they ask questions differently, sometimes just brings out like a little bit different of a vision. And that's why I had you send me a bunch of pictures because I'm like, I've heard you talk about all this stuff, and I see the occasional picture that you post or something, but getting a visual of like how you set up your rhino enclosures or how you do the cork rounds and stuff, it like really, it's like, okay, that makes me think because when I think of something, it might not be exactly how you actually did it. And that's always like makes you want to evolve your keeping in a way. And then I also, yeah, there's a few things I won't just ask you all the questions right now, but yeah. Uh, any new herp trips that you went on recently? Obviously, you went to West Texas. Did you do any other herping more recently than that?
So yeah, and I didn't go out with Justin when they had gone to the Carpet Fest. I wasn't
Oh,
able to make that, unfortunately. So the most recent thing that I had done was down in Southeast Colorado. Was able to with Brendan Hediger, who Phil from Arids Only. He was the guy who was helping him manage that collection when he was off site from his house. We had gone down to so that I could tick off the Colorado Forum Massasauga on working through the venomous of the U.S. list. Eric alluded to that a little bit, right? So of Crotalus, I call it 27 forms, 7 more Cistrurus, the Colorado form being distinct from both the Western and the desert, to give you 7 on that. And I think I come up with 48, 47, 48, 49, somewhere in there, total U.S. venomous reptiles. So anyway, on trip 5 or 6 down to Southeast Colorado, finally was able to get that done, which was good because they're super seasonal in terms of how you can reliably find them in the spring and fall. So I wanted to hit that window so it wouldn't be another 7 or 8 months at best, and probably more likely 11 or 12 because they're easier to find in the fall than in the spring.
wow, interesting. And those, because those guys are the desert Massasauga, so they're a different niche than the easterns that you find up in Ontario
Yeah, they're
and
quite,
Pennsylvania and all that.
yeah, quite different to those. Much smaller, thinner, less densely patterned, and yeah, their habitat type and utilization is totally different. Theoretically, I think they would be called a desert, but they're in this isolated pocket in Colorado, so I think they're different than what's down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, down by Dustin in southeast Arizona, southern southeast Arizona. We did look for them. We also went to Arizona, New Mexico, and maybe that's what you were thinking of with the group at the end of September, maybe third week of September, something like that. That was a good trip into a new range down into the Palencios, and that was it's rough down there. That's really rough area. We got some weather that was good for the Palencios generally. It's a tough, basically that whole mountain range is going under desertification associated with fire, a century of fire mismanagement, and it's in the rain shadow of the Chiricahuas and the Chiricahuas to the northwest, and the Sierra San Luis to the south, southeast. So that, I spent all year watching daily rains and watching them come and watching them float over and go into the lowlands and not be super helpful. But we wound up getting them, but when we were there, and that wasn't necessarily the way that it's interesting, right? That I just was re-listening. Eric is starting to put out the old NPR shows since Blog Talk Radio unceremoniously disappeared with 1 week's notice. So he's sort of reissuing.
So Blog Talk is gone now.
It's gone. Yeah, and all
Okay.
those things are gone. Fortunately, he had already been in an effort to download those things. I have some or many of those. I actually wound up having Apple. I'll come back to the point, but Apple Podcasts, I guess, automatically downloads and saves. So that would be that's the Colorado Forum Massasauga. One of 3 that we turned up that night. But Apple Podcasts would automatically download the episode. So I actually have almost all of the Reptile radio shows that were on an old computer where they had just been downloaded to the machine. But that's sort of the things that are necessary, right? Because if you're relying upon a third party, Blog Talk, seriously, after, whatever it had been, 15, 17, 18 years, they told Eric, you have 1 week and it's just going to go completely dark. All the things will be gone forever. So anything that was relying upon those RSS feeds was just gone. So he's reissuing those, and I was listening to Dr. J, Justin Doolander, on which was I think the 7th or 8th of the NPR episodes that had come out back in 2011, and they were talking about their trip to the NT and things, and he talked about going down to Dorat and having, they were getting the first rains of the season and anticipated to be super productive, and the answer, like all things, is that it's complicated and that sometimes, yes, rain is good. Depends on the temperature, depends on the time of the day that it is. What we were seeing with our trip to Arizona, New Mexico was that the rains were coming in sort of the early to mid afternoon, but we weren't really getting another peak of sun to raise the temperature before the evening. So it was really just kind of putting a damper on the activity. So yeah, rain is good sometimes, but it depends, The answer is always it depends. Not nearly so clear. It's not just, in the rain desert is good. And certainly when you're in a rainforest and you're looking for reptiles, as we saw on our first trip to Australia in 2018, we were up around Cairns. In the rainforest, when it rains, especially heavy, wet, cold rain, the only thing that didn't mind that was scrub pythons. Carpets didn't want to be out. Oh, and frogs. We had a bunch of white-lipped tree frogs and things. So those didn't mind at all. But in terms of pythons, scrubs didn't seem to mind, but certainly the carpets, once it started raining, they tucked away for sure.
Oh yeah, I think I think here it's like similar, in a different way with like the salamanders, right? Like it rains and it could be like 4 degrees Celsius out and stuff's crossing the road. It's a heavy rainstorm, stuff's moving, stuff's spawning, even though it's like pretty cold out and like borderline freezing. But for whatever reason, those animals are totally fine moving at that 10 to like 3 degrees Celsius, which is like really weird because you think they would like maybe stop at a certain point. No, they're gonna move just because of the weather pattern, which is pretty
absolutely.
And then I feel like I've heard like people like when you guys talk about West Texas, it's like the same thing where the rainstorm comes in, and then it's like everybody says it's going to be productive, and then it just like really isn't as good as you expect it. But that could be like just desert animals in a monsoon area being like, okay, well, if it rains too much, it's probably not a good thing for me to be out either. So it makes them hide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we saw that. So in West Texas, the first time we had gone was in sort of the late fall. It wound up dropping colder than it was sort of 2 weeks early to be unseasonably cold. And yeah, we were seeing that same thing where it would rain late in the afternoon into sort of dusk. And then it would just, all it would do is kill the temperature. And at least if you're talking about snakes, it wasn't helpful at that moment. And I've seen it too, looking for pine snakes in New Jersey on the backside of functionally a hurricane, tropical storm or a hurricane. And it seems like, as you're talking about, that same lesson is learned where intense weather events like that, I think at least the reptiles that hope to survive, probably have inherited genes that make them a little bit leery of going out for a week or 2 weeks after that. So yeah, rain can be good, can be helpful, but super variable. It all depends, as it always does.
Yeah, I found every time I go herping, it's more the warmer weather after a cold front. That next day, if it's sunny or if it's even remotely warm enough to for them to come out, that's usually the day you find the most amount of animals. But that's been my experience, and I really only herp in the cold, so I'm not
Right.
sure.
Yeah. Or even sometimes it can be the second night after that, right? It's depending on how early in the day did they get that perception of it, and do they, yeah, all sorts, a multiplicity of factors for sure. But I agree.
Do you mind if we go back to the basics there? So, do you mind just going over your collection? I'm really curious because I know you keep a good amount of a diverse collection. I know the main ones that we're probably going to talk about, but I'd love to know exactly what's in your collection just so I know kind of where we're going to go into this because I'm pretty sure I know where Mike's going to go, but I want to see if there's anything else that'll draw my attention. I definitely want to go down the rhino rats, even though I know you've been asked that like millions of times on multiple podcasts. But I'm curious to know what else you keep.
So at this point, yeah, and I know you guys hit on this in the episode with Eric, right? In terms of talking about I'm in the same spot as him, trying to keep less and do it better. I've kept most of the things that you can keep in terms of non-venomous reptiles, and then Gilas and beaded lizards, and then worked with a variety of things when I was volunteering out at the Denver Zoo in earlier days. So the answer, at least in terms of pythons, colubrids, is I've probably had basically everything that you can have. It might have been one animal for a couple weeks, or it might have been, stuff that I've literally had for 25 years going on straight. In terms of now, the principal focus stuff that I have is the rhino ratsnakes, as you said, and that's been a continuous item since I used to work pro exotics as well. So going back to that time, I bought with my buddy Tom Weaver, who's now down at the Sonoran Desert Museum. We bought all of the pro exotics rhinos when they started getting out of them in 2002. And I've had them ever since. I've had rhinos ever since then. I also have Jamaican boas, Puerto Rican boas, Solomon Island tree boas. Those are the main focal points for sure. In terms of other, things that I like, Colorado is not the most, at least taken in its most draconian, is not necessarily the most accommodating state in terms of what you can keep. It's not Pennsylvania, unless it's a sugar glider. So, there are certain things that I used to work with and don't anymore, but are certainly of interest and whatever. But yeah, probably I have thoughts on a lot of things that would be of interest. I know a big topic of conversation on here is the West Texas stuff, is Alternas. Probably, I don't know that you've talked about it as much, but variable king snakes. Both of those would be things where I've had 50, 60, 70 of those at one time. I think they're so cool because you could have 50, 60, or 70 of them and know each one of them, particularly both Alterna and variable king snakes, where, yeah, I know each of those animals and what those are. I didn't send you, Mike, any of those on here, but if folks want to see some of that, you could go on the High Plains Herp page on Facebook, and there's galleries. And maybe Dominic, maybe that's the starting point. Maybe run your parallel screen, go over there, check out those galleries, and that's a good representation of a lot of the stuff. Done a lot of, as I say, probably have kept, other than I've never had an African rock python, I've never had a Burmese python. Other than that, I think I've had, at least for some period of time, all the pythons that you can have in the US. I do like pythons as well, like colubrids, like locality stuff. In terms of why I keep what I keep now, because people ask me, sort of what that goes to, and I do think it goes to sort of the things that were cool when I got into it. I've always been big into. I was front end of the internet in terms of reptile internet, seeing, watching stuff from King Snake when it came out in '97 into early '98. So I've been on there, seeing everything for the last 28 years on King Snake, and I know it's shifted mostly off King Snake at this point, but I've been around for all that, seen all of that. But at the same time, I was big into books and Reptiles magazine and Vivarium. I have all the vivariums. Those have always been super influential. So seeing in there, in books from the 70s and 80s where it's talking about Loxocemus being the coolest, super cool for whatever reason. All the stuff in, um, the reproductive husbandry book, seeing all those, I talk about a dork or whatever, right? Going, being a teenager.
Have
What would you
Have you
bring on
kept
vacation?
Loxocemus recently?
I I actually have not, which is, the thing that
They
came to
seem
mind
like
when I said
something
that.
up your alley.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they were unavailable functionally. I know Stan Grunbach had some, but there were very few and far between. What was it? Probably 10 years ago, and then they started getting they put a quota on them to come out from Nicaragua, and that's why we started seeing more of them as wild ones, because they just take so long to mature. They're not easy to reproduce. They're low recruitment. So, yeah, that's been really cool. But I thought about it at that point. I actually talked to Cameron and said, "Hey, can you do this?" And it was actually really instructive, because his answer was no. I'm not set up to. There's no infrastructure, uh, much less that he was tied into in Nicaragua, to really be able to get access to those animals. So even there was a huge quota. I think it was several hundred at least, to come out of there. I don't know how many were actually coming out, because when that change in the legislation came about, there wasn't the infrastructure and support to actually immediately turn that over and start sending those in. But I do think that's where most of those came from, and certainly have given the species a bump in terms of availability, because they were on track 10 years ago to not be around, or at least functionally not be around.
So just,
And I
can
do
I cut you
think,
off for just a
sorry,
second?
go ahead.
Just for the non-colubrid people, and definitely not me, Loxocemus, what is that?
So they have a variety of common names. They're usually, I think, called Mexican burrowing pythons.
Okay, got it. Cool.
So um, they're an egg-laying, mostly, what would you say? Mostly gray to brown snake, gray to brown to black snake on top, with a creamy belly that then will have lots of freckles or fleck inclusions on the back, which are really cool. Which are, a lighter color. They're really neat, and they get more as they get bigger.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, I think we talked about it last podcast, didn't we, Mike? I feel like we did anyway. But cool.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think so.
I
But
don't.
it's always cool to.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off. Sorry. It's just sometimes when you talk about certain like Latin names, if it's not like in my genre of animals that I keep, I'm like, God damn it, man! I'm trying to Google it, and I'm like, God, I can't find it. All right, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Yeah,
you
sure.
off.
No, all good. So yeah, I mean, I would bring that book on vacation. That's what I would bring. What's the entertainment? Rereading the Rasa Marchek. So uh, all those things in there are of interest. The Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans have always struck me as cool. And that goes back to, yeah, there was a Reptiles magazine article on Puerto Rican boas in '98, I think June, July, something like that. And it talks about, oh, well, it was somebody in Puerto Rico, a researcher, I think, who was working with them and maybe had some captive animals, and said, oh, they're great, but they're basically unavailable. And that's largely true. Actually, it is funny that most of the stuff, at least a large portion of the founder stuff that we have, I think, came from Canada, right? Tom Huff's place. So those animals have certainly
Yep.
been instrumental in sort of the captive genetics for those in the U.S.
Yeah, it would be nice if we still had some of that stuff, or if somebody would start talking that has them in their basement still. Maybe that's on the older side.
Sure, I
It's
mean,
hard
and they
to.
could still be around. They're definitely,
Oh yeah,
if you keep them right, they'll live a long time.
because well, apparently there is. Somebody said there was some older animals in some collection, and they just didn't want to let them go or breed them, even though they're only like 20. So it's like, well, these boas should live till they're 40. So like,
Yeah,
at least try. Like they're, as long as you feed it up to size and it's actually healthy, like it shouldn't be an issue at all.
You know what? I
So
wonder if
I don't
it's
know.
if that's a bit our fault, because a lot of people often say, like that famous line: if the riskiest, the most dangerous thing you can do to your animals is breed it, right? So you hear that all the time on podcasts. So if you're thinking you've got a really old animal, is that really what you want to do? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like maybe we're responsible for people stopping to breed their animals once they're past, like, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years old. Like, think about it. How many animals have you bred that are over 15? It's not done often. Like, so it can be done, but most people breed everything between the ages of like 3 or 4 to what, like 8, 9, and that's about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my observation.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Like my Sambo is 15 this year, and she had her sixth litter. So I don't know, and I expect her to live for quite a bit longer. I'm gonna give her a couple more years off now, and probably and cycle her every year or two breeding. But I still expect her to live a very long life because, well, they're pretty bulletproof. But yeah, actually, with Tom Huff, so his son, I guess, is more into arachnids and that, and has at some point worked for the Smithsonian. When I was looking up Thomas Huff to see what I could find, and obviously his son's name came up, and he he actually is described those amblyopes, the whip scorpion species, I believe. And so yeah, actually, apparently he grew up out here on the West Coast. So a few of the older buddies that I know from working at pet stores and stuff actually knew him growing up because he's all their age. So that was cool. So
Okay,
I think it
fair
would
enough.
be cool if maybe like if like you could get him on a podcast and maybe see if he recalls any of what his dad did and stuff, or I don't know, some sort of storytelling show would be really fascinating to me. Like even if you were able to somehow get Jeff Murray on to talk to him too, because I'm
Yeah.
sure he would have some questions as well. Like that'd be interesting. Because yeah, actually, I just sold a male Kentucky to a guy on the island who actually used to be a zookeeper in another province, and he used to breed a bunch of Sanzinia 20 years ago at that zoo. That I believe those some of those animals may have made it into the private sector in a way, like in a legal way, but
Mm.
yeah, it was like it's kind of fascinating how like those animals kind of slowly like because the zoos don't really care about them too much. So I think it was like a keepers ended up getting them, and then the keepers decided like they were getting old or whatnot, and then they decided to move it on to somebody in the private sector. Same as how there should be Jamaican boas around here too, but I think there's only a handful. But like I really hope there's that old guy in a basement in Ontario that still has several groups of them kind of thing, and you just have to find the right person to get his phone number, and then maybe we might hit gold. Because like that's like a species like especially the Puerto Ricans. Those are a species that's like even up here. Like I don't think they're not gonna blow anybody's doors off. They're not gonna sell for thousands of dollars. Some people maybe would pay that, but it's also like in the end, what like 4 or 5 people are gonna pay that, and the rest are gonna be like, well, that's $150 brown snake that wants to bite and shit on you, kind of thing. So yeah, actually, looking at the CITES documents, there was like 60 Puerto Ricans or something, 40 or 60 Puerto Ricans brought in over 3 shipments into Canada from Denmark in the early 2000s. That was interesting to see that none of those animals
Yeah.
are around.
Right, and they theoretically very easily could be. Not even descendants. Those animals themselves could easily be around.
Exactly.
Or at least they would have the capacity to be. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, well, I hear some of those old guys talk too about how even out here we had like Bahama boas. Like they're like, oh yeah, the pet stores used to get stuff in from the Caribbean all the time. They like the vine boa, like maybe they're not
Sure.
specifically those animals, but like like small boas from the Caribbean, they used to come in the 80s and 90s a lot, which is weird to think because now it'd be like, oh, I wish that could happen. I wouldn't mind some fresh blood.
Yeah. Right, for sure. And I would say too, right, that for the most part, it does seem like the trend with things is for them to become less available. The common narrative is, oh, we used to be able to get them and now we can't. But I do get a little frustrated when I listen to podcasts and the conversation is always sort of fatalistic and prisoner of the moment and saying like, oh, we'll never be able to have X, Y, and Z, because there are certainly exceptions to it. And even, when you're talking about in the early 2000s getting Puerto Rican boas imported into Canada, that's a CITES 1 here in the U.S. Endangered level, Endangered Species Act listed species. It seems unlikely, right? And even now, zoos have difficulty importing Jamaican boas, even from zoo to zoo, crossing international boundaries, which is a similar situation in terms of their status. But it does happen. Is it unnecessarily difficult sometimes? Yeah, but sometimes that's a function of, and it's funny to think, but that can be literally the sort of whims and or prejudice of a particular inspector at a particular port, the person who has to be, the person who signs off on that paperwork, and maybe they get a different job, like any of us. Maybe they, just stop working there, right? Or whatever it is. And so things that seem impossible are not always so. That doesn't, I'm certainly not an advocate for doing dumb things or things that, don't make a lot of sense and saying, oh, let's make consciously bad choices because it'll be fixed in the wash, right? And I know that I'm sort of hitting on a muttonism here. And I think the answer as always is that Nick and I agree on almost everything. It's hard to think of whenever I hear him talking about stuff or when we're in person talking about stuff or whatever it is, we agree on almost everything. But I think just to simplify the conversation, particularly on podcasts, he will say things as though they're black and white. Everything is clear. Everything has a clear answer. Everything is certain. Again, I agree with almost everything, if not everything, but my perspective is that there's essentially nothing in the world that is certain, so that we view them from the opposite lens. I was even going to say, because I know, Dom, this is a hot button topic for you, that the whole hypoexanthic, or exanthic is an improper term, that whole thing to me strikes me as unnecessarily pedantic. I understand the point, and I agree, but it is also at the same time unnecessarily pedantic. And I would point out, when we frame that as saying no reptile ever is truly anorthristic, right, in the sense that it's, or exanthic missing yellow, and then the whole thing that they're the same spectrum of color, whatever. Well, and I'm not a corn snake expert, but I have been around, the reptile industry for long enough to know that there's a type B anorthristic of corn snake that doesn't have yellow. So like, boom, bam, done. Like that could also mean that it's just not a visible level, that I wouldn't argue that maybe there's some trace amount, but it's like the charcoal that makes the blizzard when it's the albino, and those don't have yellow. So there's the exception that undermines the absolute rule. So I did want to highlight that. I agree. All of it is fair and makes sense, and I totally think it's fine, but we're probably unnecessarily we don't need to give people such a hard time. It's fine to do it to illuminate the conversation, to instruct. I think that's fine. When we're using it to bludgeon people, it's a little tiresome.
I'm not sure if it's really bludgeon people. I just think that we know better. We should know better. We should strive to simply improve a little bit. Like something as simple as incomplete dominant, or calling it codom.
Sure.
God,
and
it
I
drives
think that has
me
mostly
nuts.
won. Incomplete dominant has mostly won.
Every single conversation,
that
has
had its day.
It's still there. It's still there everywhere. I just wish that thing would just disappear. It just doesn't make sense. Like there's all those little terminology. I feel like we could so improve. Sure. Just like, why do we use super? What is a super? It literally means nothing. Like there's so much terminology.
It means homozygous. Well, okay, maybe that's it.
But why don't we just say homozygous, whatever incomplete dominant trait it is, right? Like it's just so much easier. Like I just wish that the community would slightly improve over time. And we have the capacity to spread that knowledge. And yet people they're like, yeah, I know that it's that, but I still call it that. Right? I know that this is the right way to say it, but I'd rather just say it wrong. I'd rather sound like an idiot. Like, I don't know, but I get your point.
I think maybe some of it is the folks that you're talking to, right? Which probably speaks well of you, because you're out there instructing people, you're teaching people, you're engaging with people that are newer. I would say that in the discourse that I'm having on a regular basis, that I don't hear that at this point. People are on it. So I think that means that you're engaging with out there, doing the Lord's work, and you're talking to people and teaching them stuff, and good on you. Heck, I mean, and I know this, actually, I had, gotten chided for this 25 years ago, and lesson learned, of the whole leucistic, right, being the appropriate pronunciation, for that. And Dave Tracer, who's the oldest reptile site on the internet, at least that's how he had, was putting it out there. The Ophidiophile, I think, was his old website. I haven't looked in a while to see if it's around, but he's a Colorado local dude that I knew as a person in person. And we were talking about the Western hognose mutation that's from Colorado. And, he had said, no, dude, you say it leucistic. And, since then, I say leucistic, even though it sounds a little bit strange. And certainly I would agree with you, Dom. That's probably one that hasn't been picked up, but that's how you're right. That's how how you change the change the conversation is you have to highlight it. You have one uncomfortable conversation, then you're fixed, you're set straight for the next 25 years.
Yeah, the leucistic one is really tough because it really sounds like crap when you say leucistic, and I know that it's leucistic, and I'll be honest, I'm probably still saying leucistic because it just sounds better. It just
Yeah, because it
rolls better.
sounds,
Leucistic
yeah, I
sounds like
agree.
ugh.
Well, and even, Scott Eiper, his, that the appropriate, and heck, I took 3 years of Latin in high school. I understand and agree, but I still, get a smirk when he's insistent that it should be King Horny,
I
like,
knew you were gonna say that one.
okay.
That one's just funny.
So, yeah, we have to pick and choose our battles, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fair. I know with that anery and exantic stuff, I felt it was more just like there needs to almost be like a post out there somewhere that like actually like says exantic means this and anery means
Right?
this,
It's
and those
the
terms should get implemented more
dictionary,
places.
the colloquial herp dictionary, right? Where we look and say,
Yeah,
oh, this is what this actually means. I appreciate your point is spot on. We say all sorts of
yeah,
things as sort of a shorthand, um, shorthand for it, and sometimes it's an accurate representation, and sometimes it's not. And other times it's you wind up then talking to Travis Wyman, and he'll just look at you like, okay, well, cool. You just exemplified to me how much you don't know. So great.
exactly. Travis or Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah,
that's the other thing, right? Whenever we're using that wrong language, is people will take it different ways. I might take it casually and just say, okay, I know what you're talking about, and I won't necessarily get into it and give you a hard time or whatever. And not that Travis would either, but he's going to look at you and be like, think a little bit less of you for sure.
yeah. I know I've learned it from doing the podcast stuff as like as a host, and then sometimes when you're trying to be too structured or when you're trying to ask questions and or answering questions, you might stutter or lose your words a bit, and then you missay stuff. It's like now I realize like when Owen says something in a way, you're like, yeah, no, this is way easier to fuck up your words and say the wrong thing that you didn't actually mean, or maybe you did mean it, but like you just couldn't think of the what you actually know or talked about 5 years ago. Because like as like a listener for podcasts, you're like, oh, but Owen, you guys learned this from this guest like 5 years ago. Like you know
Right.
this. When like no, like we like even just doing 20 episodes, like and listening to podcasts every week and stuff. Like sometimes I listen to probably 20, 30 podcasts in a week just from working, and every day you listen to 5, 6 different podcasts sometimes, and then like it's just all a kind of a blur. Like you pick up information still, but then it's still like it's just like all like a blur of information now since COVID. Like there was a time where it's like I know everything on NPR, and now it's just like it's kind of just like blah. It's just like there.
Absolutely. Well, heck, and I saw it or heard it when I was listening to the show you did with Eric that you just put out. I guess that was probably a couple weeks ago that you recorded it. In the conversation, you had mentioned, the show that we had done with Brian Box. And I know that Eric had no recollection of that show at all. If you had said, the Student of the Serpent on Alterna, then he would have been like, it was me and Rob, and we had done that show, and that was 2020, 21, something, so yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm sitting there going, he has no recollection of this at all. He's like, Brian Box, who are you talking about? Okay, Alterna, what? Like, he knows Alterna,
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
but he's just like, no. At 600 episodes in, I have no. And but at the same time, he can't say, what are you talking about? Or that didn't happen because, again, 600 episodes. So.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I know when I was asking that, I forgot Student of the Serpent. I was like, is it
Yeah.
herp history or is it? I'm like, no, it's not. Because he only did like they only
We
did
only
like
did 3
two
or
or
4.
three.
Yeah, we had the super
Yeah,
weird front one with the womas, and then
yeah,
we did that one with Brian. We did, I think it got put out, the one we had talked to Mike Pingleton about timber rattlesnakes.
I
I
don't
think we
think
put that
that
out.
went out. No,
Okay.
because
We
that would be a
definitely
good one.
did. So
Same with the
we
Eric
we
Sangolan
talked to him
episode that
about
needs
him.
to come out.
Yeah, so we talked to him. Maybe we did an NPR, and then we were trying to do the Student of the Serpent thing shorter as like a species focused thing. And so I think we recorded it. So I remember we talked to Mike, and then afterwards we had sort of made a separate stream or put a pause in the thing and then come back to it. And it was intended to turn into that, but I think that was that was probably the last thing we would have done, and I guess it didn't go out. But yeah, I think we talked to Mike on NPR, which was good. And super nice guy. We actually just on Fight Club talked to Matt Cage, who's a really good buddies with Mike and goes out herping with Mike a lot. And I thought that was really really productive. I was super good to actually get clarity on what a cat mage, right, is what Mike will call him and stuff on the when he's doing trip recaps and things like that. But yeah, I was happy about that.
Do you mind if I ask
Yeah,
whatever?
no,
Whatever happened to Student with a Serpent? Like, why did you guys decide to stop? Because I was pretty like when you guys decided to take it out, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is gonna be different, and then it just poof.
Right. I think it's mostly a function of like finding a dynamic that works and then making it work in the schedule. The big thing with podcasting generally, and this is something that goes back to Reptile Radio, because we'd seen it, both Eric and I had seen it play out in real time, is that the ability to have a fixed schedule that you then stick to, even when you're kind of maybe not feeling it, or life arises and there are so many incentives to not do it, that you kind of need to commit to that, whatever that cadence is. And it could even be irregular, but you got to, then have a cadence where you assign the different dates that you're going to do it, and you stick to it even when things arise. Otherwise, eventually you'll just make excuses and not do it. Right. And so that's probably where that it kind of wound up, is just failing to institute a process where that would happen. And as I say, going back to the Reptile Radio thing, how it had played out, they did every week for I think 2.5 or 3 years. And then, and when you listen to the first handful of episodes, they would have said that, I don't even know, Mike, if you would have gotten a chance to listen to, even when you started, because they had put them behind the LBC, and then Larry had taken them off of the RSS feed and all this. It was mistakes in podcasting, right? And I do always get frustrated about that. All the old Herp Nation podcast that disappeared, that was very frustrating. It's frustrating the Blog Talk went away because all the Leopard Gecko Nate something, those ones went away. So much content went away, with that. In the context of the Herp Nation thing, I just can't even imagine how those creators felt, because it wasn't really their decision. It was tied into the Herp Nation thing that when that folded, that just took the whole thing down. And I wouldn't have been able to abide that, but that's me.
I think I saw, didn't they release videos with that Herp Nation stuff? I don't think I've ever listened to it, but I remember there being maybe videos off of it.
I think there was
Vin Russo and that.
Vin and Nick had one, and then there was a kind of ball python one as well. I don't remember who that. It's just not coming to mind. But what I easily distracted and often by myself, was that, when you listen to the original Reptile Radio episodes, they said, oh, we're going to do this even when it falls on Christmas and New Year's and whatever, and I'm sure that was sort of because it was Tuesday night or whatever, or Saturday night or whatever it was. And they had made it work through those years. And then it finally came to be Christmas on that Saturday night, and they didn't do it. And then they skipped the next week's too, because that also meant that it was New Year's. And I think they did one episode, but because they had sort of broken the seal, it was like they missed 2 weeks, they came back for one, then they missed 3 more, and then they did 1 or 2, and then they missed 3 more, and then they were back for 1 or 2, and it functionally was gone. And CK, Constrictor Keeper, kind of picked up the ball after, within 6 months, it was basically dead, and CK picked it up. I was on there a couple weeks in a row on there with him, and that was basically the last Reptile Radios that went out, was the ones that I had done with them. So podcasting, if you want them to continue, most podcasts don't last, right? The average is always put out there as being 7 episodes, something like that, because it is a huge commitment, so I appreciate and applaud you guys undertaking the effort, but I would say you're already at 3 times the average length that they go.
Yeah, I think
the fans cheering from the audience.
I was gonna say, I think
we've recorded 21.
Yeah, I think the trick for us, because Mike was off a couple of times for different trips and stuff when he was coming here and all that, and I was like, I still want to do it, and I was like, that's the idea with having the Shan, is that Shan is the backup whenever I want to book off or whenever Mike wants to book off. And the idea is to never, ever not do one. And we're also always one episode, technically two in advance. If ever you can fix the Zach Whitman episode, which Mike better fucking fix it. But we're technically two in advance, right? But the other idea is that if I want to book off or things like that, and if ever it does fall on Christmas, we're just going to we're going to lose those episodes in advance. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's been working well.
Yeah.
Talk about podcasting though. So Reptile Fight Club, obviously, to me, that's the main show that you're on, and I love it. Do you mind talking a bit about the evolution? It seems like your show is kind of changing too, right? There's Reptile Fight Club. I keep seeing a couple of different shows. Do you want to go a bit about how that's going and what the evolution of the show is in your head, or where it's going? I don't know if I'm kind of changing subjects a bit, but I'm kind of curious because you guys are talking about a lot more. There's a lot more herping related shows, and I don't know. I'd love to go down that avenue.
Yeah, for sure. So to me, obviously it was Justin and Chuck's thing, and driven around the idea of debating two sides of a topic that ideally should have two reasonable positions that could be advocated for, right? In terms of, I think a lot of those were in terms of sort of breeding ethics, husbandry ethics, selling, and that was sort of the original genesis for it. And honestly, that certainly is familiar because when we'll be on trips, Justin is great at prompting conversation, and he'll toss out things to try and get folks to, start talking, make sure there's conversation, make sure there's chat going. He's also put us to the test where he'll just say, all right, Rob, give me all the scientific names of all the monitors in Australia. Go. Let's keep awake. Let's do this. And you got to try and work through it in your mind and go from there. So those are super helpful. Probably not as interesting in a podcast, but that was the original sort of conceit, right, of what we were trying to do. And I think there's certainly utility in that, but I don't want to the first sort of diversion from those sorts of episodes, I would say, was the idea of I didn't want to bring on an expert in a field. Like the example that jumps out to me was we had Bob Zappalordi on, who's 82 years old, something like that, started what is probably the first reptile, wild, herpetological consulting firm that would go out and do work for state agencies or for developers that were proposing to build on land that potentially had protected species. I didn't want to have to contrive a fight to talk to Bob Zappalordi. I wanted to be able to say, I want to have an in-depth conversation with Bob about his expertise. And that wasn't his first podcast. He'd been on the Snake Talk podcast, but Chris Rankin's shows are shorter than what we do, and necessarily out of that, they don't get into some of the details and specifics that are of interest to me. So it's, hey, I want to have a follow-up 2 years later, 3 years later, whatever it was, with Bob and talk to him about herping in the Pine Barrens and, figuring out getting access to at least some tiny portion, all the things that he knows, and trying to put that into practice to go find a pine snake. And that, it was, well, how can we frame this in a way that's still where we don't lose the construction of the show, or the goal of the show, but still be able to do that without, as I say, just sort of arbitrarily constructing some fight and then being stuck within that narrative when we're talking to him. And so that led to the Grilling the Expert series, and that's kind of what I called. We had Zach on as well, Dr. Zach Lofen, to talk specifically in the context of hognose snakes, and that was really happy with that. We also had, and I forget his name, it was one that Justin had booked, but he's like the conservation director at Zoo Atlanta, I think. Tom Mendelson, I think. Maybe. And anyway, sorry, it escapes me. But we wound up talking about, frogs in Mexico, which was his sort of area of specialization. So super interesting. And again, it was nice to not have to contrive a fight that would then constrain our conversation. Additionally, there are just folks that I want to talk to, but I don't necessarily have a clear fight topic, right? Something that would fit within the early structure of the show. And again, maybe I don't want to be constrained in that. I just want to talk to them. So how can we do that? And that's, I think, a common theme of that, at least the folks that are catching my eye or whatever. I'm uh, tentatively kicking around the idea of having on our Herper Bro series, where we're, talking to these folks who are putting a lot of time out in the field, and generally speaking, are folks Michael's age and younger who are, have the time and capacity and, excess funds and whatever to just be out in the world, finding cool reptiles in ways that that aren't accessible to me, at least on sort of the cadence that they're doing them. So those are kind of things that are in the works, ideas that are in the works. We don't want to lose the thread of the show. At the same time, I don't want to. I think it's just as diminutive of the show if instead we're either, not fighting, quote, fighting about something that's interesting, or if it's just purely contrived, and that probably means that there really aren't two sides to the topic. I know I heard Reptile Love Club, all that's fine, but I think that's probably a reflection of the fact that for the most part, both Justin and I can see beyond our own perspective. So even if it's could argue something that isn't how I do it, or even necessarily what I believe is right, but I still can see and understand the utility in that. The hope is that we might not be going at it, going for the throat, but that we're still arguing, advocating for the position that we have on that issue, and doing a good job of elucidating the points that do support that. At the same time, this isn't high school debate. I don't need to pretend that the other side doesn't make sense. We wouldn't be talking about it if there wasn't a reason to view things from the other side.
Yeah, so I got to bring up the fact that I did say Reptile Love Club, and I mean it with the utmost respect. I love your shows. Obviously, I've been on your show twice, I think, in the past few years. So, like, I love it. You guys have got my utmost respect. I want to say it. I didn't say it in a condescending way. Okay, I don't know if it came off that way.
No,
if I did, I apologize.
No, you're all good. You're all good. I'm not. No, and I know there's something to that, but it's, again, I think it's a function. It's a little bit different. The dynamic is certainly different when we have a guest, particularly a guest that feels strongly on whatever it is that we're talking about, which is great when folks have topics and want to come on and talk through them. And I do think there's a ton of utility to that. And then it can kind of be, depending on where that falls, there certainly have been instances where Justin and I might see things differently, and one of us aligns more closely with the guest or the other. And that's a great role to either, that person who's in alignment kind of becomes a mediator and making sure that we're getting good points, kind of for both sides. But maybe if the guest has ideas that they want out there, but again, as Mike talked about, sometimes it's not easy to, to speak clearly, say what we mean and mean what we say when we're in this context, right? It's easy to flub stuff. So hopefully either Justin or myself then can serve a role to kind of see where the person's trying to go and express that opinion. And then if they agree, great, they can co-sign it. If they don't, they say, no, Rob, you totally misunderstood what I was trying to say. And that's useful too, right? I do think some of the utility of the podcast, of that particular podcast, is the ability to push back and to explore other sides. When we're in a guest space, it can often be socially difficult, right, to push back, or some people, myself can be included in this, just continue talking, right? If you're talking to Nick, he's just going to keep talking, and it's rare to have the train stop and sort of hold on, let's clarify what you meant there. One thing that jumps to mind is there was a podcast back 2020 21, something like that, Word on the Snakevine, which is a really good show. They had a ton of great guests on there. Guy, more of an academia guy, but he had Mark O'Shea on, and Mark mentions he's talking about his trips and things, and he sort of yada yadas people having died on 3 of his expeditions, and he does frame them as expeditions, not as trips, but I'm hearing this through my own lens, and it's like, well, this would be very much a big deal. And Mark just sort of, yeah, sure, it's happened, whatever, and I think he then is going on to talk about how the cameraman almost fell off when they were looking at the olive python with the roughy, or, at least it was in that context. Someone had a very close call. And the host was so focused on the next question that he was asking, I don't know if he was actually actively listening, because if I were there and I were actively listening, I would have to say, hold on. Now I need you to pause and let's walk through what you mean when you say that. And the answer is that he would be in places for 3 to 6 months, and anything can happen in 3 to 6 months, let alone if you're on some uninhabited island in the river in Brazil, right? Any sort of thing can happen, and that's mostly what he meant by that. But the idea, it was definitely a notable, right? Notable issue of sort of the lack of pushback over the, hey, let's return to that topic. And the hope is with our show that we do kind of probe into those things, and there's not nearly so much just, oh well, we just let the guests come on, and then maybe the next episode we say, oh, that was kind of crazy when they said this or that or whatever, or we just have that conversation off air. But hopefully that's a value that we're providing in the space, is if folks come on that we ask some of those questions to try and get at things that certainly we would hope that listeners would be interested in or talking about coming out of that. We want to have that conversation on air, not just have folks wondering.
Yeah, I definitely I remember that. And I also remember Phil and Nipper having to cut out chunks of their episode with him due to some of the stuff he was talking about, which makes me want to listen to the uncut version of it. But yeah, no, Mark seems like a really interesting guy. Actually, the Tony
he's
Wigley
got a lot of great stories.
Guy, that Tony Wigley guy used to do like work with him or something back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was either during his TV show or before it. And he was like, yeah, Mark's an interesting guy at the very least.
He's a character for sure. So absolutely. Yeah, I love, what they had him on twice, right? They had Mark on 2 different times, and love it. Always interesting, learn a ton, and always very colorful anecdotes and things. So fabulous.
Oh yeah, I really wish I know it's venomous mostly, but like Phil and Nipper are like another good combo. Just like kind of like Phil and Justin are like a really cool combo. Like for whatever reason, like it would be cool to just hear Nipper and Phil just talk to some guests. Like, well, they need to put some more shows out too, but just like that interview combo is just like, it's like, yeah, I want to hear. Same as like Phil and Roy. Like I know Phil's kind of back, but like it's like you need to find somebody to do it with, because like we need to make this consistent again, because like I really love Phil's philosophical thoughts in it. Same as how I really enjoy you and Justin, as like obviously your dynamics different, like you say, than it was kind of like Justin and Chuck. Like I feel like Chuck and Justin were like a little more like Fight Club kind of, and that's definitely like kind of fit it. But I love how you guys are almost like kind of shifting it to what you're doing now. Like I love that grilling the expert thing, and I would definitely like sometimes it's like you guys don't even need to fight, just like have a conversation and maybe get into a debate over a topic or something somehow naturally. Because like hearing a lot of your interviews, it's like Alan Rapace and that was another great interview you guys did, and like pretty much everything you guys do is like really really good and really really fascinating, because I listen to all of it and I try to re-listen to stuff as much as I can, kind of thing. And I know like that's gonna be like more like your main thing, since it's Warren said Boas isn't really like, it just doesn't really work with having 4 hosts with it, kind of thing. So like maybe I could see you eventually like maybe bringing on Warren to interview like a Boa person or something eventually as a part of that, just to do it and just to get it out there. Because like I know I'd really enjoy listening to you guys interview like Graham Reynolds or some of those guys working in the zoological field with West Indian stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know. It's just different times of life and whatever, that it's been a challenge to do the Boas show, get everyone aligned and able to do it, at the same time. And mostly it's that I think Keith really wants to do it on a regular cadence, or on a specific cadence and things. And when that hasn't happened, that's super frustrating, obviously. So I would hope that I think it's maybe not completely dead. We just need to have sort of get aligned on what that looks like and what the scheduling is. And then, as I say, in the podcast thing, you got to then stick to it. Because I totally agree with you, Mike, that I think those are, and I appreciate the kind words and you listening. That's great. That Graham Reynolds, I have, again, from the Snake Talk thing, I had listened to that show and that prompted me to write out a page and a half of notes of things that I would want follow up on or want clarification on, or I think people should hear that maybe aren't listening to that show. So,
Right.
that
That episode that
that
they
it,
did with him was like way too short. It's like,
yeah, I mean,
and
it's
we're
just
done.
that
What?
context
Like you
is,
didn't hit anything. Didn't hit a
yeah,
single thing.
enough to
And then
skim
try
the
to
surface, but there's a ton
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Oh, and we're trying
Um,
to just like going right into the hobby stuff. It's like, well, nobody's gonna not too many people are gonna want a silver boa anyways. Like you should be focused on
right.
conserving
Let's
it
not
and stuff.
focus.
Like
Absolutely. So, yeah, totally agree. I think so Graham, for sure. I'd love to um, also talk to, so Dustin Smith's a good friend of mine. I've known him for 20 years, and he had a good show on there about the Virgin Island boa. And it was funny that, yeah, after all these years of doing podcasts or whatever, I was like, yeah, this is shame on me that he went on Snake Talk before I had him on a podcast. So, that's another one that would, all the great work they're doing down at the North Carolina Zoo in terms of the Virgin Island boa stuff, that would be really good. Um, uh, Jeff Ronnie, the bow file, right? I bought cages from him for 20 years, so he has a ton of interesting ideas about different things and as well. So that, I know that was one, basically that was the one that we were going to do and just never got it scheduled. And we were going to do a follow up with Quetzal, which should be easier now that
oh
he's here
yeah.
in Texas instead of down in Costa Rica. So, yeah, there's a ton of shows that are out there that I think we have the insight and background to put out good content to really facilitate those people sharing their knowledge to a broader audience. So my hope would be that that's not as dead as it seems. But yes, to your point, if that is the way that it proves to be, then yeah, we could certainly have Graham on as a grilling the expert and chat through a bunch of those things because there's definitely a ton there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like I even see with like this podcast, that's why I kind of like the Reptile Rejects name because like me and Dom could go hit whatever we want, or in the future if somehow we wanted to like Graham and Shan do like like more Morelia Python episodes, and then like I just even if it's you or Warren comes on with me and we talk to somebody about boas or we like, talk about turtles or something like hey,
Right?
you could really like just pump out podcasts on the same platform, and then people can pick and choose what they want. I don't know. It's that like well like you want to hit so much, but then like we all work a lot. Like I know I'm assuming with what your background is, you work pretty long hours during the week generally, and I know I do, and I know Dom does too. And it's like oh I can think of 3 podcasts that should be out there, but it's the having the time to do it, and then also the time to upload it. And even if you don't edit too much out of it, like it's still you have to still sit down and export it and upload it and type up the short little description with all the links on it. Like it all in the end it all takes time, and but it makes you the creativity is still flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're super fortunate that Eric does so much of that stuff for us. Fortunately, we give him, for the most part, our stuff is unedited, save for if there's a particular, it's going to be a tech issue, is, basically where we're at now. And I'll annotate where that is in the time frame and send that to him. But other than that, we don't really do anything with it. And hopefully that's fine. Hopefully people are willing to accept the content rather than being worried about that. But it's, for the most part, it's an excuse to have the conversation. I would just love to hear Bob Zappalorti's stories, and about different things and his insights and all that stuff. So it actually, as much as I'm saying that I don't want to contrive a fight with him, the podcast is contriving that conversation. The ability to come on and ask him what I want to hear about, for a couple hours, that's the utility to me. So even if I appreciate that, folks are listening and that's great and hopefully getting something from it, I always appreciate that feedback. But honestly, I know that both Justin and I were really doing it selfishly for ourselves to be able to have a lot of those conversations, or even just, as you say, when it's just the one-on-one, it's really making the time to have those conversations with your friends. Or even we talked about it on the trip recap of he used to, and I think he's trying to get back towards doing it, but would put out these amazing trip/visit pages on his website, that's sort of the narrative story associated with his trip. And I always found those amazing and just loved, soaking in every bit of it. And we now get to do that in the context of the podcast medium, and then just have that downloaded, and there you go. If there's some aspect to it that we forgot, some humorous story, whatever it might be, now it's recorded for us, if no one else. So honestly, it's sort of, selfishly building in time and the ability to have cool conversations. So I think you guys should use it for that as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's a great way also to see how things were back then, right? Like when you listen to a really old show, or you really, especially guests, and
Absolutely.
it's I'd love the idea of going to listen to like either like Jewlander 20 years ago or Mutton 20 years ago, or and hearing their collection, or hearing like their anticipation of like, we'll never ever get an albino carpet python, and now it's like the most common thing that is basically no value, or things like that. Like just how things have evolved. I personally love that whole idea. So
Absolutely. I mean, that's the part that's so cool of Eric putting the earliest NPRs back out, is that you get some window into that.
where
So
is he posting
when
them?
so it's a non-public feed. I can send you the link, but it is an RSS feed that if you have a podcast player, that'll upload from an RSS feed. So Spotify won't. I think the Apple stuff, if you have that and that's how you listen, I think you probably can add it yourself. But yeah, you need the link, but then you can subscribe to it. And I think batch uploading them basically is 3 or 4. I did point out to him that he had already managed to kind of fumble it. The Luke Snell was the first real, so it was Eric himself that he talks about for 10 or 15 minutes. Then he and Owen, similarly short. And then he had Luke Snell on twice on the before and after Tinley Park, so October of 2011. And when he uploaded him, there it says Luke Snell part 1, but it's part 2. And then he put it part 2, Ben Morrill, Nick, and Justin. So it's 8 that are up there. But in reality, those 2 with Luke are the second one twice, which I thought I'd listened to those dozens, hundreds of times. And so when I heard it the first time and it was presented as part 1, I was like, this is after he's come back. That definitely happened. He was on before. And I texted that Eric yesterday or the day before when I listened through to the second one. I was like, dude, this is part 2 twice. But yeah, I can send you that link, or folks can reach out to Eric. He's happy to send it out, I know. So, but that was when they just put out the first edition of the Complete Carpet Python. So it's before I think Justin was in the process. He doesn't talk about it, but in the process of writing the Antaresia book. They had just gone to Australia. I don't know if it was his first time. It might have been his second time, but it was certainly the first time they'd gone to the NT. So it was really fun to, rehear that, having just been there last year with him and stuff. And before we went, we were taught, even after we had gone, so this would be 6 years ago, just before we went and after we came back, Justin and I are talking through a specific spot in Kakadu, and I'm like, well, where did you go? Where were you looking? Where were you trying to find that Owen pellet, compared to this, and I'm trying to map it on. And then we're there in person now, 13 years after he'd recorded that, going, okay, were you talking about here, all this stuff? But we couldn't even make heads or tails of it when we were going, which was 8 years later. And then afterwards, I'm saying, okay, well, it's got to be this. And he's saying no. And then we went 12, 13 years later, and he's even hard to remember and all this stuff. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, Dom. He had just, I think, gotten that year, he had for the first time bred all 4 species. This is before pygmy bandits, however you want to fit that in, but had bred all the Antaresia for the first time in a season. So it had just, I think that was the first year he'd hatched pygmy pythons. So when he'd been on there, so framed through I know that's a bugaboo, right? Is that yours or Shan's bugaboo? But the whole pygmy python bit, but it's it is fascinating as to have that historical time capsule, right? And Nick's on, he's just gotten his albino olives, and he says, oh, they're just pigment challenged olive pythons, and I don't know if he was already foreseeing the difficulties he would have in producing them, over the next 12 years, 13 years, whatever. But it is fun. It really is. And I love that herp history stuff. I love, Eric was talking about trying to have Hank on, and I've been badgering him, making it very clear that I intend to be on that episode because I remember meeting Hank, in 2004 at Daytona, 2004, 2005, talking to him at the bar at the Hilton, and Heineken and all of that. I remember that well. So I fully intend to be on there when that happens.
You're gonna anticipate that cease and desist order from Tom Crutchfield as well.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it is what
I
it
can
is,
see.
right? We're all just giving
I
our own
joke about
opinions.
that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, even if it wasn't even talked about.
Right? So
I just I find that little part funny. But yeah, no, that is that whole Hank Molt thing would be I think a great show. Like just even if you don't touch on specifics with stuff, like some of the stories would be cool, and see like maybe he knows like some of that book might not be fully real, or maybe he's like, oh yeah, no, that was me. I did
sure.
that.
Yeah, and I remember Hank's old website back when at Global Herp, right? I think it was that, being around in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, some of the issue, right, that wound up with some of that was that it would be, I think he was working with a lot of different people on a lot of different levels, and sometimes that would mean he would have a picture from someone of like, hey, can you try and sell this for me? And then it's on his website as a thing that's available, but he actually has to he has to connect to make it work, but that doesn't mean it's sitting in his possession. And sometimes people take differently to those sorts of things and whatever. So I recall that being sort of an issue. But I certainly remember lots of pretty animals that were on there. Another blast from the past named Terry Lilly was always interesting, had lots of interesting critters and things. And yeah, you always wondered, what's happening here, right? What's going on, and is it everything that it seems to be? Particularly as talked about in the more so, is it Stolen World or the Lizard King that goes in? I think it's Stolen World, right, where they talk about the whole undercover operation and all this bit.
I think
and it's
at least they have some sort of undercover operation in that, like with was it Western Zoological or something?
Yeah, whatever that name of that thing
With
was. It certainly had those Reptiles
or
magazines
was
that
it
they were.
Boland's? It was like
So
one of
that would
those
have been,
stories.
yeah, not the Boland's thing. That was the crates. That
Yeah.
that whole thing sounds totally
that was
wild.
the we got documents for like
Yeah.
10 or something, and they wanted to do 20 kind of thing.
So they put a false bottom on the crate and all that, and then he goes and sees that the crate is totally dismantled. It's like, well, I guess they figured out that we had, they found the false bottom. So yeah, it's all interesting. There's definitely a ton there, and is always interesting when we talk about ring pythons, right? Even if you read Stolen World, when we're listening to podcasts, right, and people talk about, oh, ring pythons used to be so much more available. Well, it tells you in Stolen World that those things were being the blind man's bluff, right? They had a blind guy who then, was not being screened heavily at customs, who would go and smuggle baby ring pythons out of New Guinea. So like anytime anyone says to me, oh, ring pythons used to be cheap 30 years ago, and it's like, yeah, they were being actively smuggled through that whole time. So like it wasn't necessarily solely a function of the fact that they were, oh, people cared more and they used to be, they were cheap because they were being produced in such numbers. It's like, no, I mean, they were actively being smuggled on a consistent basis from New Guinea. So they were continually, if they were too cheap, well, again, why are they cheap? In the same way that happens with all wild reptiles, is like the cost of producing those is being subsidized by Mother Nature, right? So it's not actually, certainly there's a cost to go collect them and whatever, and there's a fundamental minimum cost, but like that's really, heck, having Solomon Island tree boas, those things take a long time to mature. The only reason that they were ever cheap, and that's the other. Hey, my soapbox. Nick is known for soapboxes. I have some too. It turns out that some of that stuff, particularly in that instance, Solomon Island tree boas. Oh, they used to be cheap. They should be cheap again. No, they never should have been that cheap. When we're talking about prehensile-tailed skinks, right? Something that has a super long gestation, produces a baby or two a year. Karusha, but I went actually with There you go. Down. I went with the common name first, but yeah, in that case, those animals they should always have cost $1,000. They should never have been $50. The only reason they were is because we were not reflecting the cost to their environment that taking those animals out represented. Right? Those things with their reproductive strategy, they should always have been that price. It was just that they had, they were sufficiently populated on the given islands that folks could go and grab them, and that's how they were $50 or $100. But in terms of replacement capacity within that environment, they should always have been $1,000, because that's what it actually takes in costs to the environment to make those animals.
Imagine that's the same thing for like monkey tail skinks and all that. They used to be like $100 skink, and now
Yeah,
aren't they?
that's
Is that's
That's what
what
I'm
you're talking
talking
about?
about.
Oh,
Yeah,
but what name
yeah,
did you use? You
yeah.
used some other name.
So I said prehensile tailed skinks,
Ah,
and then Karusha.
I
Yeah.
was like,
So I tried, and then but I used the wrong one. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the thing that should just never have been cheap, right? They have a baby or two over the course of a year, and the only reason they were cheap is because you could go to that island and they're all living peacefully, and or so we like to frame it. And you could just go grab 2 dozen and put them into a bag, and go grab a sandwich, and that's been an afternoon. But that took decades for that quantity of those animals to be present there. And in an afternoon, you just took decades of, the work of that environment.
yeah.
humans are good for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe we want to. What do we want to hit on?
I was
Do we
gonna
want to hit
say,
on
how
rhino
about
rats, or do we want to hit on West Indian boas?
how about we leave let Bob decide which snake do you want to talk about most.
Well, I know, Dom, you had asked about the
You
rhino
can
rats,
go
and
down the
certainly,
ball route
as I
though.
say,
It'll make Mike happy too.
you're good. So, and as I say, they're the only thing, having worked with hundreds of different species across lizards, boas, pythons, colubrids. They're the only constant that, yeah, I have had at least a rhino since in my possession since at least 2004. Every day, I might not have been home, for it or whatever, but in my house, I've had at least one for 21, 22 years, something like that, and they're the only species that's true for. They are kept with a few bare minimum parameters, or you only have to do a couple things, and they're the hardiest snakes that there are. You can keep them, expose them to warm temperatures, cold temperatures. You can feed them a lot. You can not feed them a lot. The only thing you can't really do is let them be consistently too humid. Not necessarily in the way we talk about with rosy boas or bogertophus, the transpecos, or the rose. What is the common name for the ones down in Baja? The rosalii.
Baja rats.
Baja rats. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, huh? But yeah, they're just they're as close to bulletproof a snake as you can get. In fact, if you open up that picture, so one note with them, if you can you zoom into the right there? If you notice, there's that little sort of weird, a little bit further to the right. You see that little weirdness on its body? Yeah, just a little below your clicker there. Yep, that right there. So that's its interstitial tissue. So some males are totally crazy and they have a copulatory bite, but some males go overboard with it. That is the female's, underlying muscle that's visible there through a wound associated with that, with breeding. And I still have that snake. She still does great. This is from eggs from probably, call it 8 years ago, something like that. But yeah, that's sort of their one weirdness, is some of the males are totally nuts. But for the most part, they do great in tubs. They do great setup, and sort of the idea with this is a naturalistic cage. The German ideal appealed to me. This is supposed to recall the sort of limestone karst of Catbaugh Island, which is it's probably the spot where they're most commonly found nowadays. Certainly, if you look at INAT, I think most of the records are from there. The little violets that are in the cage there are Vietnamese violets. I think it used to be, I don't know that it is anymore, Charita tamiana, which actually were, discovered to science associated with a joint Russian-Vietnamese expedition to North Vietnam. So rhinos were the U.S. Population of rhinos, at least the original animals that came in from Klaus Schultz in the late 90s, were descended from animals that were collected in Tam Dao, associated with the, at that point, joint U.S., Russian, and Vietnamese project in Tam Dao, so in North Vietnam. And then they went to Klaus and Tula over in Russia, and the offspring of those were the founder rhinos in the U.S. The little violets that are in there was from the same, at that point, Soviet and Vietnamese, no U.S. involvement, project in the early 80s. So it was collected in that same place. And the bamboo, at least to the genus level, should be something that's at least present in either Catbaugh or Tam Dao now. So that was sort of the ideation, was either the origin point for the U.S. captive animals or Catbaugh, where they're most commonly found now, and kind of recalling all those things. I think it's really cool. Unfortunately, I had made those cages set up those cages with those violets right at the same time that I had paired them to breed, and the males definitely trashed those violets. So I think maybe I'll have to shift to trying to use one as sort of a tucked away accent piece, right, that can recall that. But I'm actually considering breaking from sort of that narrative idea that I have around it and maybe going to Schmitty's sweet potato thing. That's kind of an interesting idea, or finding something similarly hardy that I can kind of enliven the enclosures with. But again, they're cool snakes because you can keep them in cages, you can keep them in tubs, you can keep them on paper, you can keep them on a substrate, you can keep them on. If you're in a humid place, Carefresh or Aspen probably has some utility to it. Somebody was just talking about keeping something with a mix of the two on some podcast. I think it was Michael Kuhn on Cush's Corner talking about Louisiana pines and black pines, and he was saying, he mixes, it was either pine with Carefresh or Aspen with Carefresh, and that could have utility too. I know Casey Lazick was a big adopter.
The Carefresh is fairly dusty.
It's a little bit dusty, right? I think you have to be
too. So that's where like the thing with like Aspen, like I use it, but then like it really makes you think about, like, you see like rodent like facilities, or you see like snake facilities that like guys don't necessarily wipe down the tops of the racks and stuff, and then that
right, and they're covered in that stuff,
covers in dust, and you're like, that can't really be good for. And then it happens with cocoa too, right? Like even if you keep them on like the bigger chunks, like there's still a bit of dust with that when it dries out. So like it's like I wish there was like, actually that's where Cody Joe, he's found some like hardwood mix that like he can get where he is in Alberta, that apparently like he's able to get it wet. Like he keeps his baby rings on it, and it doesn't mold, but it's also like not like leaching anything. So like I almost want to figure that out. Like it looks like what, you're keeping your ring python on wet pine shavings, but like it,
right?
But like he wouldn't do it unless it actually worked too. So
Cypress mulch, man.
That really, yeah. But I don't want to pay like $30 for like a small bag.
If you find the right place in Ontario, the large 40-liter bag is about $7.50, $8. It's the same price as any other one. There's only one place in Ontario that has it, as far as I know, but it's worth it.
Wow.
Yeah, for the most part, I don't use particulate substrate. I think if you were going to, especially if you're using something that will act as a desiccant within the environment, Carefresh being a notable example, right? You need to be in a humid place. I'm not in a humid place. It's not something that I would do. With rhinos in general, you probably would be safer erring on something that is going to dry them out rather than being too wet, for sure. So in those cages there, they do have the drainage layer. It is the um, I don't know what the material is made of, but it's functionally it's like a little plastic sort of wafer in the water level. To meet the constant level of water is within that layer. It can percolate up into the dirt, but there's certainly within that top layer of soil that is dry. You don't want that to be wet or continuously wet. Their one issue is I think, as a function of living, say, if we're talking about the cat-ba population being on that limestone karst, is that certainly gets wet regularly, but it drains really well. And so they're not sitting in constant wet. So if you were to visualize something, maybe even what you're talking about of, oh, that works for ring pythons, I probably wouldn't do rhinos on that. That's probably overkill. You'd be safer doing either that drier or keeping them on paper, something like that, or going with a as I said, it's probably just a function of how much water you're putting into that, but you'd be safer keeping them on something that is
Yeah,
not
it's just like I
continuously
think it was
wet.
just like a normal like a some sort of hardwood mix or something. So like it was just normal shavings that he only got wet for the rings kind of thing. Everything else was dry,
Yeah.
like kind of normal. Yeah, that's interesting because no, I keep like all my colubrids on. I think at one point like I use those pine pellet things that you can just get for like kitty litter or whatever
Sure.
that I was mixing in because obviously like I listened to the was it the Mike John Michaels with the Indigos as
Hmm.
he talked about on Dave Kaufman and then on other podcasts about how he would do the aspen or pine or whatnot and then he would throw in the pellets and they would expand and I don't know I guess they might have worked but it's hard to tell if they really did anything or not.
Just make sure they don't eat them, right? That's the only thing that would worry me a little bit about
Oh
that.
yeah that'd be bad. That's a fair point.
Can you imagine? Oh,
So yeah,
Boom.
that I could see going wrong pretty quickly. Um, I'd mentioned it briefly earlier. I think Casey Lazick was one of the original sort of people who'd uptaken in the late '90s the Carefresh thing, and I remember seeing Angolan pythons and Brettles and a lot of those early pictures. I think even if you look at Nick's lineage charts that go back to on the early Brettles, I think that female is sitting on a clutch of eggs in Carefresh. So just as an interesting thing you remember from 28
Oh
years
yeah.
ago with little utility other than to tell it to you now.
Yeah, like honestly, like Carefresh wouldn't be like a bad like for reptile shows, like as like a display, right? Because you can get like white or something that like really pops with the animal. Like I would see that being a good option kind of thing
what
instead
is
of just normal
Carefresh?
shavings. It's just like paper.
Is that like the little
Yeah, it's like
crimpled up paper
It's almost
that?
like a
recycled
Okay.
newspaper. Yeah,
yeah.
or
It's
something.
almost like I think, but then when you use it, it's almost like tissue paper in terms of the softness to it. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like it definitely seems really dusty, but pine shavings are dusty too, so I don't know what the difference would be. Maybe because it's more of like a paper, it's almost more like in a fiberglassy kind of way, right? Like it's not like so I don't know. It's hard to like I'm not a paper or shaving specialist, but like noticing things like that makes you at least think. Like obviously we get away with a lot of things. Animals will live for 20, 30 years still, but it's trying to figure out like the way to do them right as well. So with the rhino enclosures, when you originally described, like I had just re-listened to Phil and Roy's podcast with you when you kind of talked about doing the new rhino cages with the lilies and that too. Uh, I kind of had a picture in my mind. Maybe it was because I was like crossing it with how you keep your West Indian stuff that you had like a bunch of cork kind of stacked up, or you had like a buried cork flat in the
Yeah, there
rhino
is one
cage.
buried. So in that
Okay.
picture, I hit it well, I guess. If you go back
Yeah.
to that, especially when they were first done.
I thought it was in there.
Yeah, there was a singular cork flat that's sort of half buried or completely submerged, particularly below the leaf litter. So it's like without that leaf litter. Oh, and all the leaf litter there, all the different leaves that are there should represent, or at least on INAT, though that at least to the general level on INAT, they're in either Cat Ba or Tamdao now. But yeah, so each of those has a cork flat that's under the bottom there. I can sort of see it, but probably because I mostly know that it's there, that creates structure within that sort of subterranean environment. And they definitely heavily utilize it. It's been a real success. Um, but again, that's not a surprise. That's nothing to say about how I'm doing it. It's as much to say about how adaptable they are, that they went from being in the only other cages that I've been keeping them in recently is I have some of the old Neodesha cubes. And that's actually what that female with the where she's got some of that muscle sticking up, um, what she is in there. So some of them had been in those, but those have papered over fronts, so that it's a very entirely different experience. So I'm putting in snakes that have been in tubs or in Neodesha cages with papered over fronts into full all glass terrariums, right? And they all responded to it really well. There was one I think that was a little bit clearly weirded out by it, and that was the idea with the books that you see there was to kind of break up the visual pattern and give it some resistance so it wouldn't push on that. And within 2 or 3 days, it was like, oh, okay, this is a wall, even though I can't see it or don't perceive it as such. So
Very nice. Quick,
Yeah,
quick.
that's a good point.
Do you mind if I ask? Is there a ban on importing more rhinos, and what you have is what you have, or are they still freely imported?
So a mixture. So as I had mentioned before, right, the original stuff had come from Germany, and then Klaus Schultz in Germany, and then Tula was sending animals that were from collected at the same time. So it was a very tight gene pool on the front end in the sort of mid 90s through I think Tom and I got the first wild rhinos, and those would have come from China in 2005 through Cameron. He got them back to back. He would get stuff every 2 weeks, and but the first time we saw him, I think it was a pair 2.1, and those were the first probably wild rhinos that had been in the U.S. sort of in known living memory. Vietnam was closed to the export of live animals, other than I think ranched Burmese pythons and maybe a couple other exceptions from I don't know the 70s to early 80s, somewhere in there. So that was it, right? And that was an amazing day, right? The idea of, hey, we can have these exactly in the narrative way that you framed a lot of these conversations of, okay, limited gene pools. What does this look like? Do we have the capacity to get more? The answer seemed to be no. And then at least to me, arbitrarily, one day it was, okay, that answer has changed. And now we could get wild ones from China. And those ones actually did really well. And then Cameron got some more the 2 weeks later, and we got all of those again. I had actually wanted, so they are, particularly in wild ones, visually sexable. They are sexually dimorphic. Males are larger than females. Males generally you would look at and I would call them a green and yellow snake. Females, I would call them a green and white or a green and blue snake, and they're smaller. Generally, they're thicker bodied. The largest rhinos are old adult males, but I frame that in a specific way. The younger males, even upon maturity, are thinner than the average female. Females, as soon as they hit sort of reproductive capacity, start growing wider, and so this is a female here. A male of the same length would be probably 2/3 the width. But they can get, with age 15, 18 years, they can get 5.5, 6 feet long, something like that. And then they'll have that same girth that those females have and be, really large snakes. So anyway, Cameron got this group, and I probably misremembered. It was probably 5 the first time, and somehow, however it worked, we bought all of them. And then in classic fashion, it's like, well, I can't just keep buying all of them forever, dude. What are we doing here? So I want this particular 2, and even from 5 feet away, okay, those are the 2 that I want. And he had run out, and so I just wrote a check to Ryan Burke, great guy, who had worked for Cameron, and I was like, okay, yeah, I just want these 2, and I didn't even have to take them out or look at them or whatever. I just said, yeah, give me those 2. And I had made it probably 10 minutes down the road, and Cameron had come back, and just from hearing, yeah, he only wanted these. He didn't even, he didn't touch them, but he only wanted these 2 or whatever. And he maybe come back and buy the rest of them. So and then he didn't get any more for a long time. But actually, it's funny, we've mentioned Tom a couple times, because he started getting some kind of when he had reemerged on the scene, I think on the backside of the legal difficulties, Belize or whatever it was, and all that. He was working with, reemerged as a figure in captive herpiculture. And so this would be 2008, 2009. They had gotten some in from China as well. And I think that was sort of the origin point for some of the other lines of them that are going. Gary Laskowski had gotten some from there. I think some of Terry's stuff was from there, Terry Burwell. So those, and then Cameron within that time got him another time or two, and I bought those. And all those did remarkably well, right? Because Asian rat snakes are notorious for not doing well in captivity. And I don't know whether that was an infrastructure question that had changed within that time frame, or if rhinos just being super resilient were able to hold up to it. More recently, so in the last couple of years, Dan Maliri had some that he was saying were from Vietnam. So I can't pretend to know what the legality on that is. What I would say is that I bought 3 pair of those and they did not do great. So, and I actually, and I forget to mention that in 2014 or 15, Cameron had gotten some more. He got what must have been a captive hatch little baby, wound up being the truly crazed male, at least relative to females, that had caused that wound there, and was a great producer, but always a challenge. So there, let me finish one thought. So as I say, the Chinese stuff, China seems closed, and that's what I hear. I haven't seen much wild caught China stuff, or even captive bred China stuff for the last 7 or 8 years. I don't think. I had rhinos as recently as probably 2014, 2015 through Cameron, but not more recently than that I had been seeing. Then Dan had these that he was saying were from Vietnam. I asked him clarify on that, and he just said, yeah, they're from Vietnam. So I don't know if there was a change in legality, but those would be within the last year or two. Maybe there's a handful of those. Most of the stuff that I have now as is that China stuff. Descendants of that China stuff, or even some of those original animals that came in. A lot of my collection is descended from stuff that came in half changed back in 2013, 2014, and then that captive hatched male from that same time.
So did you keep some of those? So obviously you bred some of that original pro exotic stuff. Do you keep a couple of those, like second or third gen
I
from
still
that still too?
I still have some of that in the mix. Basically, I am tracking it, in terms of sort of founder animals that I have and diversity within that. And if then we're looking at sort of the animals that I have that are producing now, all the stuff that I have now is either, if you called each of those founder animals 1 relative to their sort of genetic basis, everything that I'm working with now is less than 2 full points. So which is good. It means it's not inbred. The stuff that I have is incredibly diverse. I do know what it is. I do still have some of that pro exotic stuff in the mix with, I think, 1 or 2 of those animals. Certainly not just that. It's interesting, right? Another of the soapboxes is I think the lineage stuff is really cool. I think what the condor community does is really cool. I think Nick's point about the ability to hand someone a lineage chart, I think that's really neat. There's an intrinsic value to that. At the same time, I do think it sort of flies in the face of how this works in nature, in the sense that I think our obsession with either based on morphs or lineage or whatever it is, our obsession with knowing it was this pair of animals that produced this animal probably means we've had fewer animals about which to worry about it, because their natural function is probably exposure to multiple males, and there are all sorts of systems within nature to either promote or behaviors from males, or production of almost like a sperm plug sort of functionality in terms of after they've copulated to try and inhibit other males from also breeding. There are a whole bunch of different functions that can come into play and behaviors that come into play that speak to the fact that in nature, for the most part, I think it's not uncommon to have multiple paternity in the animals that we're seeing, and that's probably something that by not doing that, when we're in sort of that lineage mindset or a morph mindset, that we're having less snakes about which to worry about it, because it's just, oh, that male wouldn't actually work, but if we were using 2, maybe we'd have more success. So I do think that's something. At the same time, within the rhinos, I just now kind of in the Dr. J way, I just have them set up in pairs and leave them together all the time. And I think that's the best, the way I've had the best success with them doing it. Certainly, let's see, in terms of rhino potential issues, the early problems with folks producing them in the US is that they don't breed like most colubrids, certainly not like corn snakes, so that they're more like a boa. They take their follicles grow over a long period of time. It's a long cycle for them to grow their follicles. And they need to be, a male needs to be available and accessible throughout that time. So they're much easier to breed as a pair or trio that are kept together than it is to rotate a male, because you're probably just going to miss it and you're just going to get slugs or nothing from all the ones that you tried to run it through, as opposed to just, keeping that one and getting good productivity out of it. So definitely a tip. And I mean, it goes, heck, even Kathy Love was selling her rhinos. She'd gotten some of those, original Klaus animals that come in the late 90s. And I remember in 2002, 2003, she was selling hers because they weren't working. They didn't work in the way that, corn snakes did. That essentially what would happen is if you didn't keep them continuously paired, they grow huge before they ovulate these follicles and turn into eggs. And you'd think you'd have one that's gravid and about to lay, and it hasn't even ovulated. So that in fact, you pull out that male and you're going to get slugs or nothing. And that was the space she was in. That was the space most people were in. Honestly, I do think an increase in them in captivity has certainly been our willingness to talk about the fact that, yeah, if you want to produce them, yeah, I know it looks like it's about to lay eggs, but it's actually 6 weeks out. You got to that better be paired right now.
Very nice. Something I'd love to go into. So you talk a bit about sexual dimorphism, but mainly, so my understanding is there's three color phases, right? I'm gonna say color phase. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but you've got the browns, the greens, and the blues. Um, do you know a bit of the genetics? Is it polymorphism? Like what is it that's going on for the different colors? And when you talk about it, you said like the females tend to be more on the bluish sides, the males tend to be more on the green. Is it only one sex that goes that color and such? Like, I don't know if you mind going down that road a bit.
Yeah, no worries at all. I think it's the barons that are more cleanly into browns, greens, and blues. But theoretically, there is a reference of an unchanged rhino, so one that had size but was still gray or brown or whatever. If you like in the earliest literature talking about Adatula in the mid 90s, there was no photo, there's no, but sort of an anecdotal. Oh yes, theoretically an unchanged, one that was an adult size but was the neonate color exists, but I'm not aware of anyone having. Certainly, I've never seen a photo. I haven't heard subsequently follow up on that, so I don't know if it was sort of just one that was taking longer to change, and maybe wasn't quite as big as it was being, wasn't a full adult, something like that. Obviously, anything's possible, particularly that's sort of the framing I would put on it, but I'm not aware of that. So really, we're talking, they're basically green snakes, right? And in the way, recalling the axanthic conversation, what blue and yellow make green, and so those underlying colors are in the mix. And a lot of the blue rhinos that you'll see is actually what we used to see with chondros particularly back in the day, either as a function of most commonly having laid eggs, or it could have been a function of injury. That sort of, it seemed like a loss of the yellow visualization of the yellow associated with the hormone shift with producing eggs. So you'd have hormonal blue chondros. Certainly, you can see the same thing in rhinos. Also, some of them do seem to have sort of a polygenic, greater representation of that blue color as a ratio to the yellow, kind of the one Mike put up there. The other thing, right, is that blue or green and the way that it's expressed, and I know this is more properly documented in collared lizards and things, but there have been scientific studies on this going back 50, 60 years. Whether you're exposing them to ultraviolet light will impact what they look like in captivity. It's talked about mostly nowadays in the context of abronia, how abronia graminia, I don't even know the common name,
and
the green.
And the gastrophilus
Yeah,
too. They get really blue when you don't keep them right. I feel, and maybe
yeah,
not really green tree monitors, but yeah, no, the Prasinum as well are. Yeah, I see a lot of like ones in pet stores, and you're like, now things at a show, that thing's like blue. It's like, Yeah,
Right. It's
I
almost like
definitely
the
see what you're
wild
saying.
ones, have this verdant green look to them. And in captivity, some of them, they tend to be more blue. Um, and that's particularly with captive sort of F1, F2 offspring. So that I think that's another facet to how they can look. So I think the answer is hormonal blue is part of it. Some of them there's a polygenic basis to it as well, and then how you're keeping them, potentially impacts that as well. The lighting that they're under, both regularly and when you're looking at them, certainly can have an impact on it as well. So I know the ones that are marketed as being
Yeah. So
true
you're
blue,
saying don't
super
spend
blue, whatever.
$3,000
Yeah.
on a rhino? That's exantic.
Yeah, I'm dubious of that. I would want some, certainly I've seen the original photos, and to me those looked like what my original animals looked like after when I looked at that photo, I would say, I'm a little dubious of it's always that same photo, which has interesting lighting. Um, and that looks like an old female that's probably had a lot of clutches. And so yeah, I wouldn't be shocked that it could actually look like that, particularly under the light that it's under. That wouldn't shock me. Um, so that's, I guess, what I would say. Certainly, they can be blue. They can look blue,
I also
and
like my friend is friends with Ashley and all that. I've never met Ashley. Like I know she does like a good job importing. Like she's definitely one of like the better import people. But I agree with you in terms of like I didn't really love how like was it 2020 2021 when they did that
right.
import and then the animals jumped from being like was it normal, she was importing rhinos for 500 or less for like non-started like fish eater rhinos, so like they were
Sure.
like a fine like import price for from Europe, and then the prices on the I think the blues were 18, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was oh no, now they're $3,000. Like there's just like oh I got a lot of interest, and then just like I'm maybe it wasn't her, like it probably wasn't her choice, it was probably like the friggin' European seller they were getting them from that
Sure.
was like oh no actually I want a lot more or something. I don't
Even
know,
more. Yeah.
but it's just like what like you say like a normal rhino. I remember you and Matt talked about him on just with Justin and Smitty. I love that episode because you guys also hit on other Asian rat snakes too, and that was just it was just like funny.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, there's plenty I don't know, particularly if people aren't sharing it. But I would love to see, those animals at this point, if that narrative is true, hey, prove me wrong. Show me the pictures. Let's see them. Where are those animals at? Because they should be out there. And I would suspect the answer is yeah. People could have blue snakes, but I have blue snakes too, and it's for the reasons that I've said. I don't think there's anything magic about them. And that exactly your point, Mike. My point was kind of that I just felt like it was probably um, someone somewhere was being deceived. Who that was and whatever. Um, that's just sort of my feeling on it.
Yeah, and honestly, like a normal like the greener rhinos are like pretty good looking too, like green with the white flecking. It's
Yeah,
kind of like how the
the white is
subox.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
and
how
that
my
black
like
flecking too.
oh yeah, yeah. I've always debated about doing rhinos, but then so the dumb law in Alberta is that Gonyosoma are like illegal there, and because at one point rhinos were legal there, and then obviously there was a few years where they were probably going to be considered illegal because they got moved, and now they're moved back. So like who knows how they
Yeah,
even fall in that provincial regulation because it's dumb because like rhinos aren't Gonyosoma, like they're different. They're a different animal. That the Prasinum and the Frenatum are they're not the same thing at all. Uh, but it'd be weird because like I'm kind of planning on probably moving to Alberta in the next five, at the longest 5-10 years, but maybe even sooner than that. So it's like if I got rhinos and then I moved there, like who knows if I'd have to get rid of them or not, right? Because even provincial
right. And even what
conservation
paper did they take? Yeah,
people don't
exactly.
necessarily like oh yeah no they're fine, right? Like even here it's like oh no you can keep that, and it's like well to your law you technically can't, like I technically can't keep Reeves turtles here, like they were in a media day in 1982 because there was no geo media day until like a couple years later, so
Yeah,
that's why like a
absolutely,
bunch of stuff is
absolutely.
illegal. Yeah, so I
And
find
no one
that
likes uncertainty, for sure.
exactly. Even though it's like it shouldn't be the end of the world, but I also know one of one of the guys me and Dom know ended up getting arrested overnight for accidentally like his employee packed alpine newts in his box for Alberta, and then he ended up having to spend jail for a night, and those newts got destroyed because they were the 4 or 5 newts that Alberta decided to randomly ban. One of them is alpine newts, which is like hilarious, right? It's like, oh, we're gonna pick these 4 random ass animals and ban them. Oh, and we
Yeah,
decided to look for
probably just
through
because
your box.
oh, it says alpine. That must mean it's an invasive species risk or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
like
just
I
the name is,
kind of
sets them up.
almost get it, or it's like okay, fair. Like diones and Russian rats are illegal, but you could keep a Korean rat in Alberta, right? Like it's like weird, and like Goniosoma are illegal, and Spilotes are illegal because they're rear fanged, kind of, or something. Like it's weird. But then you can keep a Phylodras, you can keep a false water cobra there.
Yeah, which is wild. So I would say that, yeah, the rhinos as Ganyasoma thing has been previously kind of a third rail topic for me. I have strong feelings. I just don't think they're the same. But I am a splitter type, person. I acknowledge and I highlight and acknowledge and note the differences between things. So I'm more likely to be a splitter. I would say that to me, Frenatum and rhinos should go together. That's a natural subset. I had a wild rhino that had come in and its horn had been damaged either during collection or in transit. And so when it had its first captive shed, it shed off its horn and it was just flat across its face. And I can send you the picture and say, what do you think this is? And the answer would be a frenatum. I mean, it's basically indistinguishable. Save the horn body structure is different, whatever. But if I showed you the picture, you'd be like, I guess that's a frenatum. They're both, gray babies that with black and yellow inclusions that go through an ontogenic change. They're clearly that's a group, and then the sort of true Ganis is a group. Prasinum, heavens knows, now that's two different things anyway. So, yeah, there's a lot there. I don't get as fired up on it as I
Yeah.
used to. And there was a paper that functionally said, basically that came to have my opinion. So it just becomes my principal frustration was that the way scientific literature is written and intended to be engaged with is that you can agree with it or not. The question will be how persuasive your agreement or disagreement is, right? All of it essentially is positing an argument. It's a reptile fight club. A scientific paper is a reptile fight club. And the question is, do people buy your argument or not? And the answer is not, well, this is the most recent paper that came out, therefore this is the argument that's persuasive. That's not true. It's an argument into the ring and you can take it or leave it. And within the paper itself that people would reference, they laid out multiple cases for different approaches that could be taken. They could recommend option A, which just lumps everything into Ganyosoma. You could take option B, which presents, the sort of the alternative structure that I'm talking about. There was a third option where you could just leave things the way that they were. And they say we're deliberate because we're lumpers, we're choosing option A. They say that in the paper. They acknowledge that the argument that I'm making is valid, and that's functionally what the follow-up paper that would sort of contradict it just says is essentially that they made the argument themselves. They just chose then option A rather than option B. We posit option B makes more sense. That's fundamentally the thing. So if someone read the paper and said, I'm convinced, I'm going with Ganyosoma, that's fine. I would accept that, actually. That's totally fine. We would disagree, and there would be disagreement there. But the idea is that, well, this paper came out, therefore this is true. That's the part that I would push back on and would drive me crazy. Saying, oh, you're wrong in calling them that. No, I just don't find that paper persuasive. Both things can be true. You can find it persuasive and I cannot. I'm not bound to accept it. And why, when we're talking field herping stuff, why I tend to have distanced myself from taxonomic anarchy and instead talk about finding forms of saying, okay, and a lot of that actually, interestingly, is driven by, in a less globalized world, the historical species and subspecies that have been, and forms that have been acknowledged and saying, okay, do I find this persuasive? And the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no, and trying to make my own list. And I understand that is not standardized relative to everyone else, but I posit the same thing, you know, to the group of folks that go herping, and I say, here's my list of what I think, you know, the pertinent forms are and things. And, you know, Dustin could disagree. Justin could disagree. They could say, hey man, you got a unfair home field advantage when you're talking about the Colorado form of Massaga. When am I going to get to Southeast Colorado to go look for that thing? I don't want to count that on my list. Yeah, fair enough. Then don't. That's fine. You know, it's supposed to be fun.
I just wanted to talk a bit about the idea of the form. I personally love that. Like, I find it such a good way to just say, like, it even is better than locality, right? Because the locality can be just a tiny little area. The form can be just all these localities create this form of the same species. I don't know. I just wanted to pass my thought on that, but I love that idea. Like, it's not because they're genetically identical or because we found out that they're the same species according to these, and these criterias. That form is different than that form. They may be the same species, but it really, I don't know. I like it. I think it's just a way of saying it that you can't really argue it. Like, it's just, it makes sense.
Right. That's great. I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I'm totally with you. And that's the thing, that won't change, right?
Yeah,
Those
like I would
things either
agree with that
exist or they
either.
don't. If the answer might become that they no longer exist in the wild, so it's an unfindable thing. You know, we're looking, as Eric mentioned, you know, in the spring, all these lists beget other lists. It's not actually ticking stuff off so much as figuring out, okay, you know, now I actually want to find all the hognose and find all the pituophis, whatever it is. So we're going to take a little venture down, find hopefully some, at least give a go at finding Louisiana
Oh yeah.
pines, black pines. Um, and
Oh, so
I
you're
am
gonna go
sure.
for loading eye as
Mhm.
well? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
awesome.
sure it'll be a challenge. I mean, pine snakes are ghosts of their environment for sure. Which is, again, I'm still stuck. I don't think we've found completely the correct answer. I know the things that feed into it, but I'm not convinced we found the definitive final answer as to why gopher snakes and bull snakes are ubiquitous in their environment, and pine snakes are the
That's what I'm
ghosts
like.
of the
How are
sand
bull
hills.
snakes in the same species as gophers? Like bulls are like bigger, and honestly, the bull's range is so big that I'm sure, depending on the splitter that looked at them, you could probably break the subspecies of bull snake into multiple subspecies in itself and give bull snake its own species, because you got a northern extent, like it's almost like prairie viridis with prairie rattlers. Like the prairie rattlers in the north have a different uh, chemical breakdown in their
Sure.
venom than the prairie rattlers around you and the prairie rattlers down in West Texas. And actually, what's cool is I noticed when I didn't really fully see a prairie when I went to southern, like I saw one as it slipped away into a burrow, but herping outside of Medicine Hat, you got the bulls and the gophers. The bulls are freaking huge there. It was pretty cool. But the prairies, it's like, wow, that looks like they should be in the same complex as con color midget fadeds. Like
Right.
they're not like Organus are like totally different. Like it, because our con colors in the organ
Hmm.
Organus complex, right?
Yeah.
As of now,
Hmm.
like that
Yep.
that doesn't make any, like Organus and Helleri are like they're in the same complex, right? Like I agree that they're
Hmm.
subspecies of each other, but like you look at a Organus, and it should almost be called Viridis because it's a freaking green snake. Like the Organus up here in Canada are like they're green, and actually you get some pinks in them. Like they're freaking cool. Like I love finding
Yeah.
them, and I love how people say they're chill, but like I don't know, they're a rattlesnake. They'll get upset pretty quickly.
Sure.
But yeah, no, seeing the prairies is like I guess like that almost looks like a con color. Like obviously a little bigger, but it's like
Sure.
like it's definitely a lot more. Like you got the reds and you get the browns in there. You're like that, and the pattern on it. It's like I can see how that almost, but that's only looking through the phenotypic kind of part of it.
Sure.
Obviously haven't looked at. I don't know how to look at genes or anything like that, so I don't know how it lines up with that. But just the phenotypic part of it, and that part of taxonomy, which obviously some taxonomists nowadays don't even fall under. Like they're like, oh no, this gene goes here, but like
Sure.
there's still that fluid part of science where like, you need to involve multiple aspects, and that's where I think people nowadays, just in society, don't realize that. Oh well, scientists don't know anything or they don't do this. It's like, well, science is a fluid freaking concept.
Right.
Like it's a man-made thing that's just fluid. Like it's changes. Like proper science means it evolves over time and we get better with time, right? So yeah, it makes that those parts of that kind of make you think a little bit. I feel. I'm not sure how you feel
Absolutely.
about that.
For sure. No, I would co-sign that. And part of it too is just sort of what is the um, intellectual paradigm of the day, right? There's some variation through time, both in science, but particularly in the, more my vein, anthropology, liberal arts, those sorts of things, where just the sort of intellectual approach through which, the lens through which things are analyzed will cause those changes to happen, right? In a hard science, we're probably a little bit we're less susceptible to that, but not zero, right? Again, is someone a lumper or a splitter? The paper that lumped all those goniosoma together, they freely admit that their bias as researchers is to want to find groups as opposed to differentiating everything based on all these different criteria. Can we agree on what makes a species and where that falls? And we see that that's very, as both Nick and Justin highlight with regularity, that it's variable between birds and snakes and other reptiles and things and spiders, right? And heck, where we were just talking about, I don't know that it's come out yet, but we were talking about Jordan is super into finding all these unidentified
Oh yeah,
spiders and all this
I
stuff
think
at
you
this
guys talked
point.
about that. Yeah, I find
Yeah,
that fascinating
and
too.
it's wild, right? So there are plenty of undescribed, probably even genera of different spiders and things, and it's different levels of taxonomic interest. Heck, Dr. Zach, when he talks about himself being one of single digits crayfish experts out in the world, crayfish taxonomists, out in the world that are writing these
I want
papers
to
and
hear a
stuff.
Zach Loftman crayfish episode. I just want to hear him talk about
Exactly.
crayfish because that's like his most like that's like his. Obviously, he is
Yeah.
coming over to the herp world, but honestly, like I want to learn about it. Like just because like I know he's a good talker and I know he likes to nerd out about stuff. I just want to hear like I don't keep crayfish I wouldn't mind keeping like a tank full of Mexican or Texas crayfish. I know those are
Or
in the
those
aquarium
Australian ones
hobby.
are wild. The yabbies,
Yeah,
they're
some of
wild.
those blue ones. Yeah, they're freaking cool.
Yeah.
There's some like really small ones. I know we got actually there's like a species of giant crayfish up here in lakes in BC, I believe. That's kind of cool too. Like apparently well, obviously we I think we have some like smaller species in like normal rivers. Like when I was a kid looking for frogs and stuff and streams at like the when you go for like camp as like a kid in summer and you'd
Sure.
spend a week at like the bog or whatnot, and then you go catch frogs every day or whatnot in there. I don't think they let you do that anymore because it's probably not good to go and fish out all the fish in the stream as
Sure.
like a 10-year-old kid. But I love that. And then finding little crayfish there and like my dad talking about the lake in his neighborhood when he grew up and was like, oh yeah, there's catfish, like non-native obviously, but back in the 70s and
Sure.
80s, like you had catfish and bass, and he would see the swarm of catfish around the female every summer, kind of thing, going there. And oh yeah, there's crayfish off the dock. He'd just put a little string out there with some food on it and pull them up, kind of thing. And it's like all that's super fascinating. And yeah,
Absolutely.
they
I
were
agree.
yeah.
We'll have a derivative colubrid and colubride where it's just Dr. Zach giving us his best 2 hours on crayfish. That would be fascinating. I think we should send him that idea. It would,
Oh yeah.
at least you and I would be excited to listen to it.
I know I would be. Actually, what would be cool to get him on with like I don't know, maybe Corey from Aquarium Co-op or something, just to like, hey Corey, so you
Be
like
able to
you're
prompt
this
some of
guy
it.
knows how to
Yeah.
do a podcast. Just now talk to him about aquarium stuff. He's a reptile guy, but he's a crayfish guy, and I get because I know that I like like I know like he's like that's totally different. Like aquarium stuff is totally different, but like that guy Corey, like he is developed a brand just around aquarium keeping in like a positive zen kind of way. And actually we have a store up here that sells a bunch of his products and has used almost his like business format to do it, and it works. Like it works in like a high, not like a high end, but like that like like Vancouver's known as like a kind of like a weirder, higher end part of North America ish, but like not really. Like we don't have 10 million people here, but we got 3 million people, but it's like expensive to live here, kind of thing.
Sure.
And they're in Vancouver, like they're not where I live, or they're not further out east, and it's able to work but they have that Zen like thing, and they create a brand, and I'm sure they sell a lot online too to the rest of Canada, because Corey has like, I don't know, like a lot of subscribers on, like he just gets an insane amount of views on YouTube, like it's never gone away, like, and it's been like that for 10, probably
That's wild.
5 years now. Like, I don't know, it's wild. The aquarium stuff is like, I've actually recently bred some fish and stuff. Like I was into fish, and then I kind of got out, and then 2 years ago I was like, I have a bit of extra cash I could use, and I have a fish tank already going. Why don't I get some fish that I enjoy working with, or I think are cool, just
That's
to
great.
have in my dad's shop, because I got like a 90-gallon out there just running. It's like, yeah, why don't I actually put some more fish in there finally? And I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then they finally bred the fish I wanted to breed like 8 years ago at a high school. I had like one left of, and I got 6 and fed them up, and now they're spawning every 2 weeks. And now I stopped spawning them. I stopped collecting the eggs because they just keep breeding now. But they're
That's
like a
wild,
fish.
man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, it's fun how the hobby, or these multiple hobbies almost merge together and kind of work in a way of like, I feel like, I'm sure a lot of reptile people kind of started maybe in aquariums, because that seems like a more natural thing, because it's been around since the 1800s. Although it's really interesting to learn that
Sure.
reptile keeping has been around since that time too, right? Albino boas being around in the
Yeah,
1920s or 30s. Like I feel like I heard in a podcast either recently, maybe it was an old one, but yeah, like hearing that stuff was like super neat.
absolutely. And there's so much interplay, and man, they're so far ahead in terms of the tech, just based on the market capitalization and stuff, that, it's really neat. A lot of the sort of the tools and things that, it's changing the light visualizations associated with the pseudo rainstorm and the sounds and all this, even if it's just for us as the consumers, in our reptile rooms or whatever. But the other thing I would highlight, is Keith is super into fish as well. Obviously catching and eating fish, but also he has a big tank and all that. So yeah, I think there's maybe last, note on podcasts or whatever is, I think we probably need to be a little bit more open to the idea that people are interested in more things than what we kind of the boxes will frame them into. So I think you're onto something there.
Oh, for sure. I definitely. Well, I asked Keith to come on. Obviously, he's going through something soon, so hopefully we'll have him on in the spring to come. He wanted to. He didn't say no, but I definitely wanted him on. I know, was it? I think Warren or somebody was like, you need to get him on, and I reached out, and he said he couldn't right now. But yeah, no, I definitely want to have him on. We're having Scott on again because, well, I wanted to have Ty on, but then Ty, they really wanted to be on together
Right.
again. So I'm gonna have them both on again, because honestly, with Scott's episode was similar to this one, where it's like you barely hit what you actually wanted to hit. Not that that really matters, but like, like you get on, you, you get on a tangent, and then it's great, and then it makes a great show, and then it means that you probably have 3 or 4 shows with every guest, and it would be with most guests, and it would be every show's different, right? It's like, although you'd have to listen back and be like, okay, I can't listen to
How
my
does this
voice,
piece together?
but I don't like. It's probably fine if it touches on a topic again, but you kind of want to, okay, let's hit on the next topic, and that, right? So yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
To me, it's the perfect kind of guest, right? When it kind of goes anywhere, and realistically, we would have been able to bring up just about any subject and talk about it, which makes it better to me. It just means that we have no idea where the conversation is going to go, and it's much more interesting. But that's just my point of view. Do
Oh, I totally agree.
you want to hit some a bit on Boas for a couple more minutes before we close it out?
Uh, yeah, sure.
Or you want to keep it
With
for another
the
day?
well, I guess we could keep it for another day. Like, it seems like we could do a whole nother 2.5 hours pretty easily. Maybe we hit on some herping stuff for the last couple minutes.
How about what's your craziest story when you went herping?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing that immediately jumps to mind, I suppose, is we were in Central Florida, maybe the next day after having found the pine snake. And Phil had highlighted previous, so Phil's a South Florida dude, and he's skeptical of people, sort of the Central Floridians, and fortunately, is goes about armed. Well, and actually, this begets another story that's maybe even more interesting. But so we're in Central Florida, and we're coming out of a natural area. We're probably 2 miles down a dirt road off of a not large paved road, and there's a Suburban that's taking up most of the road coming towards it. Yeah, it's functionally sort of, imagine that area, and um, this vehicle is basically blocking us in. It's difficult to have two cars sort of pass one another based on the width of the road without being fully off of it. And it was a would-be ingenue. Our would-be ingenue was eyebrowless and probably 45, a rough 45, and as I recall had either a neck or face tattoo, and was theoretically in need of help. And it's just like, absolutely not. First of all, if you actually were having difficulty with your vehicle, you would not have turned off a paved road to come down 2 miles of uninhabited dirt road seeking help. I don't know what this actually is. Fortunately, Phil has his pistol against the door, and absolutely we're headed the opposite direction. And fortunately, we can do, because we're facing out, we can get out before you'd have any hope of turning back around and coming after us. So we did. I don't think they actually even wound up following us. I don't know what that was. That's just sort of Florida. But it reminded me, Phil and his guns reminded me of, he'll travel with them as well. He has to send them as checked luggage, obviously. But I think that's how that works. But
Probably
yeah,
depends
he
on
has
the
to walk.
state.
Yeah, he has to walk through with them somehow. No, they definitely have to be checked, but there's a whole process. I don't know. I'm not. I wouldn't know. I don't have the basis for knowing. But anyway, when he and I went to West Texas, the place we were going, so we were staying out in sort of alternate habitat, and then on our first night in, he knows Kyle Vargas, the club king, and we had gone out to Kyle's place and seen all his stuff, amazing collection. And then we went out to West Texas, had our fun, found our own lepidus out there, which was great. At one of the spots actually that we had talked about in that episode with Brian, relative to Alterna. But Kyle had invited us to go try and look for clubs out near his area out by El Paso. So I'd already booked and paid for a night. So then I was being a cheap ass and was trying to figure out, okay, this place has a good rating. This hotel has a good rating. It's close to the airport, should be convenient. Always never want to miss your flight. Obviously that's tremendous expense and things. So I was like, okay, this seems all right and seems super cheap, probably 75, 80 bucks a night. Wow, how is this 4 stars or whatever? But I didn't dig into those ratings and take a look at them. And had I done so, as I did later, I would say that there's probably some bots doing some heavy lifting on that in terms of lifting up those reviews. Maybe it was nicer at one point than it was then. And a lot of the positive reviews were from people who'd been smuggled across the border and said, well, that was great. At least I'm in the US now. So that was sort of the experience. I then booked it through Priceline or something, not through the hotel itself, much less just gone and paid cash. So that wound up being an issue. It's kind of a total fiasco. I'm at the front desk trying to get this paid for, and they're having me call Priceline or Expedia. I'm like, if this is a consistent problem, why are you having me talk? I don't even know. You as the desk clerk have essentially, somehow it's the funds are being paid into, they're not actually being transferred. So it was an entire mess. It takes 15, 20 minutes. Phil's out having a cigarette and out at the car. Finally, it gets sorted, ostensibly. I'm walking across this courtyard, and a fellow from Juarez who had this real tiny, but right on his Adam's apple in a no hiding kind of way, tattoo right here that it said something, but it was in what would be probably 8 or 10 point font, but right on his Adam's apple. And he's trying to hold me up for a phone charger. Yeah, obviously this is someone is, bringing La Migra over, and is just, he sees me and is like, oh, this is an opportunity to get a phone chart that he, clearly he's in. I'm sure he was just going to borrow it and would be happy to bring it back to me at 2 a.m, in my room. And fortunately, as was both true and, my willingness and ability to play the idiot, ultimately he left in frustration. And I was like, dude, the only thing I have you have to plug into a car, is functionally a car charger. But yeah, I was held up by Juarez homeboy for a phone charger, but didn't have it. Phil then finally turns up, and we go into this room, and it's clear that this door has come down at least twice based on like the gapping, and it's the motel style, not hotel style.
Holy
And
shit.
so we've brought our stuff in, and Phil's kind of relaxing on the bed, and he's got his gun case out, and I'm just like, dude, I understand your capacity to discharge that weapon tonight, but do you intend on doing so? Like, is that going to be an inconvenience to our plans and schedule? Um, and he's like, yeah, that would not be ideal. And I'm like, then we can't stay here, man. Like, I get it. I've already paid for a night at a different place. Now I've paid for a night here. We can't stay here if you don't plan on discharging that weapon, because you certainly will if we wind up staying here. Someone already tried to hold me up, and it's the middle of the afternoon. What's going to happen when the sun goes down? Like, we just can't. So that's probably the most exciting bit at this point, fortunately, and I'd like to keep it that way. We don't need to join Mark in his experience of these trips and things. So that's always the goal. All limbs out, all appendages out of all mouths, and yeah, everybody coming back. Those are the two critical components that value on a Rob Stone trip. So, and then find some good stuff.
Oh wow. I almost wish I joined you, but now I'm like, I have no idea what that's like. Although our city is known for shootings, but not like the whole of Canada has less shootings every year than the city of Chicago. So the shootings we get every once in a while here in Surrey is like minimal. And I have no worry about going outside. For
Absolutely.
being
Well,
in
I would
a
say El Paso is a
not
little
rough
bit.
part, but like in a city known for it.
Yeah,
that makes
El Paso is a
that's
little bit
funny.
rough, is I guess what I would say. In Central Florida, it's this interesting mix of um, beautiful area, beautiful habitats. Herp densities are really low, at least the ability to turn them up, but everything you find is special. But you just hope that you don't see any people.
Yeah, for sure. That would like at least you had Phil with you. I feel confident with that.
Absolutely. Always great to have
One
Phil
thing
with you.
I've
He's a great podcaster and a
yeah,
great friend and a great trip companion. Uh, and certainly he's come
exactly.
through clutch
Yeah,
several times.
I definitely like I almost want like I would definitely enjoy coming on a trip with you guys at some point, even if I have to go walk do a death march in the middle of nowhere. But I'm young, so I could probably
You can make it,
keep
man.
up
You
better.
got it.
But yeah, I know with the only worry I have with going down there is that like I would get harassed because I'm like Canadian, even though I'd obviously have my passport on me, and it's like, well, I'm not gonna move down there, or maybe I play the oh yeah, I'm 51st state eventually, even though like I don't really believe that, but I don't know, like
Oh
I'm
my
not like
God.
it's
You
Oh
right
don't
my
now it's
really,
kind
or
of
you
like
don't at all?
I don't at all.
Okay.
That would be
one should hope not. One should hope not. So
no.
yeah.
We are our own thing.
Yeah.
We know most of you guys are friends, but yeah, it's I'd just be worried about how they would treat people around now, even though it's like I don't know, like it just probably wouldn't be an issue. Obviously, you had I think Wolfgang Wooster down
Yeah,
there
we met him
when
at the
you guys
party
were.
over at Bob's
So like
place.
if
Yeah.
a German's fine, like I don't know, maybe they'd treat a Canadian differently nowadays, but it's hard to tell. It would be stupid if they did, but who knows nowadays?
We can think the
Yeah. I think you'll be all
yeah, I
right.
was gonna say we can think the president's an idiot. It doesn't mean that we hate all Americans, right? So it's kind of like the same thing. I assume that that's how Americans are. They might be frustrated at everything that's going on, but they're not frustrated against the people. They're frustrated against the governments. So it's I think we'd be fine. But then again, I mean, talk to anybody in Canada. majority of people that I know used to go to the States all the time, nobody's traveling, nobody's going. It's quite impressive how like everybody has just stopped going altogether. It's
That's
yeah,
wild.
like there's still
But
some people
it's
doing it,
also
but yeah, sorry, go.
so social media is weird too. How like if you click on one thing and then all of a sudden you get like all this stuff and it makes you feel like something is way bigger than it might actually be. Like it just honestly it makes it's like fuck, I don't know. Like every side is stupid. Like everything is dumb. Like both sides are extreme in their own way. It's just like it's like why can't people just be fucking normal now?
Right? Fair.
Like the normal people are right down the fucking center. It's like nowadays, but yeah, no, I want to go to West Texas. I want to go to like like I want to hang out with my buddies this year, but then it's also like it would be really cool to go to IHS at Bob Ashley's place. Like that'd be a freaking
Yeah.
awesome trip. Are you guys planning on maybe going, or are you guys maybe planning Australia instead?
Yeah, it sounds like Eric's really got this idea of his. So I, called him today. We'll have to connect on that and figure it out. I hear the longing in his voice, so I'll probably have to accommodate that, and we'll make it work and figure it out. So
Like he wants to go to Australia, or he wants to go to Bob
yeah,
Ashley's?
that he did not love. Well, no, he'd probably take or leave that. But yeah, the first one of those two things. So we'll have to
Yeah. Well,
probably figure
is
something out, which is good. I don't mind.
Oh, I think that would
Just
be.
Owen
gotta
needs to? Oh,
figure it out.
Owen needs to go back out there. You need to bust Owen's balls about going out there more.
It's
Yeah,
Obviously he has his own life stuff going on, but yeah,
I think the idea
I
of
feel like
I go for it.
he enjoys himself out there.
he does.
Yeah, that's the one type of trip that I've never done is the idea of going to a different country, but with other people that are actually for herping and all that kind of stuff. Like I've been to Australia, but I've never done the herping thing. And like, God, man, I can't even imagine the type of trip you'd have to be with like-minded people looking for the same type of thing. Like to me, it would be just incredible. Like that's something I
Oh,
want
it
to
is. I
experience
mean,
one
that's the
day.
thing. It's great. It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you should.
The problem is finding the people and
100%.
making it happen, right? And if I'm traveling, I'm either traveling with my kids or with the girlfriend, the wife, whatever, right?
Sure.
Like, be able to get
I
away from the kids
understand.
and the wife just to go with a bunch of guys to go look for snake almost seems like crazy, right? Like, you mean you're going on a trip without me? Like, yeah,
The wife
Understood.
gets a break from you.
yeah, that might be the way
Yeah,
to
there you
sell
go.
it, eh?
Absolutely.
Shan will
Absolutely.
take care of my stuff unless he's going with you. Or maybe you train Foddy on how to take care of your stuff.
I think I'm just cleaning everything and not feeding anything for a while before leaving and just cross my fingers everything goes well. That's probably what would happen because she wouldn't let somebody else
That
in the
might not.
house.
Honestly, that's not the worst idea because like that's when you would go is like October ish, kind
Mm.
of right. So you could probably just feed stuff a little heavier and then give them that couple weeks off ahead of time. And worst case, maybe you have to get somebody, but like I don't know, like it'd be. I think you'd be able to make it work. Me, at least, I have one good friend close by, Jalen. I could probably get her to. Okay, I need and my parents like obviously like keeping reptiles for 10 years and being kind of like a kid at the beginning of it. My parents are a bit more. My dad could if I tell him he needs to do something, he can probably make it work. Okay, change the ring python's water bowls every 2 days.
Yeah, there you go. That's
Everybody else will probably be
You
fine.
know,
everyone else is fine.
in keeping reptiles since the '90s, I've literally never had anybody take care of my collection. That's how like anal retentive or afraid I am of leaving something. Don't get me wrong, Shan could do it no problem, but I've literally never ever had somebody do it. And the longest I've left was 3 weeks, and even then, I just prepared really well before leaving, and everything was fine when I got back. I think it's doable. It's just I don't know. I don't trust people. I guess.
I have a feeling Shan would come along with you
Yeah,
if we go on
probably,
a trip.
probably, probably.
Yeah, I honestly, if like you went on a trip to Australia, I'd probably go with you. Like I know I all I have is a Walma python, and maybe eventually I might squeeze a roughie out of you or two. But
if they breed.
I'd need to. I'm still young, and before buying a house, I should probably indulge and go on some trips. I know I want to go on, like, it's fun to hang out with like reptile shows with my buddies, because like that's kind of what they do. They're more on like the hobby. They're not really on the natural like herping part of it, but that's like their own thing, and I enjoy hanging out with them outside of that too. So I love having my group of friends there. But then I know, like, since listening to NPR since 2019 and hearing the herping stuff, and I freaking love listening to that NPR NT recap.
Yeah.
As I remember being in the 6 months I was in university, that was one of the nights between classes. I like listened to that in my truck for a few hours, kind of thing, by myself between
That's really
classes.
cool, man.
And it was yeah. Although I should have probably done something else for school, but because now I'm a drywaller. But but
Hey, man,
yeah,
I
no,
respect
I
it.
really that episode like really strikes with me. Actually, I should re-listen to that again, because I haven't re-listened to it in a while. But yeah, no, that, and then obviously all the other herping trips, like West Texas, that Craig Trumbauer episode really sparked
Yeah.
that. And now I keep subox, and I have the Bairds. I should get more Bairds or get rid of the one I have. But like, they're freaking beautiful, man. Like, it's hard to see. But I love the subox. Like, that's where it's like so hard to, like, I try to keep a small collection. Obviously, my collection is pretty small compared to Eric and Owen's. Like, I only have a few subox, a couple pines, a couple pair of black milks, and then the 4 Bahama boas. Like I have like 30, 40 animals, but like it kind of feels like a
I think
lot,
that's
but then
the
it
sweet
also
spot,
doesn't.
man.
I was say
Yeah, it's like
you
a
don't
sweet
need more
spot. It's
than
like,
that. It's nice amount.
no, I don't. But then it's also like, ooh, I could do turtles. I've been going down the turtle rabbit hole.
Fuck no.
It's like, ooh, I could keep musk turtles.
So
but then,
much
like,
work.
Indian spotted turtles would be so cool, because there's one person breeding them up here. Maybe when I move to Alberta, I can get them, and I can get a pair of Cuban boas, and then we find Cuban boas are the only Calabothris band here, so I can't keep them here, but maybe eventually.
Yeah. So going back to talking
There you
about
go,
the trips, I think everybody needs like a Rob Stone in the fact that you're the planner, right? You're the ones who, whenever I listen to all your trip recaps or things like that, they're always talking about you need that one person that does all the research, that does all this, and like I want to go and I'll participate, but I love the idea of having a Rob Stone that plans it all, that looks at everything and like wants to dedicate that 2 month of going through every single thing. And I'm like, I'll gladly join and pay my share and do all that, and I'll drive and I'll do all that, right? But I'm happy letting somebody else do all the planning, because to me that's like, I don't know, I wouldn't want to take that responsibility, right? Like, the idea is like, yeah, we're going down this road and this place and that. You get there and there's nothing. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, honestly, I really thought it would be good, but I don't know. Like, because I know that's your role, right? It's one of the things that I think you get a lot out of.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely find it. I mean, it's a lot of the fun, for sure. And then it's just paying it off, as you say. So yeah, there's certainly, what you talk about, that is a real feeling to then have and stuff. And so then when it comes through, all the better.
Yeah,
Exactly.
fair enough.
So,
Yeah, I know. Like, I know you guys probably wouldn't want to come up here, but if the NPR crew ever wanted to, or you and your family wanted to come up, I could probably show you. Although you could probably find everything in Utah that's the same and more.
Very cool, man. Well, and that is one of the 3 Crotalus forms that I'm missing. Relative to Nipper, I need to find it in the U.S. First or in addition, but that is one of the 3. So
yeah, we honestly, like, one of my buddies is friends with one of the girls that does she does the whip snake research in Washington, where there's like barely any whip snakes and make it up to Washington, but she does research on that. He went down there for a few nights and found night snakes, and it's like, oh, that's awesome.
That's
like
really
night
cool.
snakes are super hard to find up in Osoyoos and Penticton. There's a couple spots where we tried to kind of like, I'm not sure if we're allowed to go there at night, but like we went to a couple parks at night. We found some rattlesnakes. It's kind of cool how bioluminescent like rattlesnake rattles are.
Yeah,
that was kind of neat.
Absolutely.
Crawling around rocks.
More complexity, man.
Found some
That's
solfuges. And then rubber boas are honestly easy to find road cruising at night. Like it's pretty neat. And honestly, they're way more common than people think. Like they're every valley in like their range probably has rubber boas in
Yeah.
it. They're super neat, and they
Yeah.
seem to like it.
Finally ticked one form of those, with Justin, which was great. That,
Oh yeah,
something cool to see. But yeah, I really like them. They're cool snakes, man.
yeah. I love rubber boas. Like honestly, like sometimes you're like, I could keep like a snake, like a native snake illegally, and then you're like, nah, I just
That's not a good idea,
it's
but
cooler just to let it
they are
go.
cool.
Like it's cooler just to like
Yeah.
find it
Watch
and
it.
then like okay, let's go find the next one kind of thing. And like rubber boas are awesome. They seem to really love fresh water though. Like wherever you find them, like they're either at night road cruising, like they're like they got the stream or something going right by
Yeah.
the road, and then like you might find some frogs or something, but they're always going to or from the stream depending on like if it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night kind of thing, right? Like
Hmm.
they're going there.
That
They're
was
super cool.
Justin's thing. Yeah. That was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you also find them. Well, I guess they're kind of near a stream, but they're also in like the more deserty parts too. It's weird. Like we found them high elevation and then back down in like a little bit of a basin that was kind of high elevation, but not. I don't know. I'd have to take you there to kind of show you.
You're right.
It's kind of neat how like limited but big it is. I don't know. I need to find some closer to here because there might be actually a population that's not too far. That me and Jay went in like June. Although it's like okay, I can see how this works, but we might need to come back here in like the fall or something on like a sunny day kind of
Right.
thing where like they
Colder but
might come
sunny.
out and
Yeah.
bask, but they come back to the rock pile kind of thing. So yeah, that might be only an hour drive away and not like 3 or 4 hours away. So
Right
yeah,
on.
that's cool. Alrighty, Dominic. I think
I was gonna say
we'll have to have a whole another episode to hit everything else with Rob.
I think if you want to do a
we could
boa
talk for hours.
in a few weeks or a few months, whenever you're ready again, I think we should redo it, but on boas that time, so you can get your kick out of that.
Yeah, I'm all good waiting. Maybe I'll have baby Bahamas, or maybe I'll have a bunch of slugs. And I'll have
Yeah.
to readjust my. Wait, they're gonna be all slugs, and then I'm gonna have to retry this again in a couple of
Positive.
years when she's back.
Power of
Positive
thinking.
mindset,
Yeah,
and
you're
it
right.
might happen.
Maybe she's still fat, but she's still eating, so I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know. When I got her, she was eating up until my buddy shipped her to me, and then it was like a month of her not eating, and then she finally dropped babies. So, she dropped slugs, not babies. So I don't know. And it was like I got her in mid-October, and she laid the slugs in November. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know. Hopefully, I left the mail in long enough. Hopefully, my trip to Alberta was like good for that, but I don't know. I'll have to see. Next time, maybe I'll just leave the mail in for the whole time, even though they freaking hate each other when they're not breeding. Like, it's weird. Cody Joe actually paired his same pair from the same litter from Jeff, because they got 2 pairs up from that one litter, and a month ago he sent me a picture, and they actually locked up finally, like normal. Like they didn't fucking run around and run away from each other. They actually like locked up. I've never seen mine locked up, but like after a few weeks of introducing each other and leaving them in for a couple weeks, they kind of like almost chilled out. Like they weren't together, but like they were not actively moving around the cage the whole time trying
actively hostile.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
they're but like they know they're there. Like they know each snake is there. Like they don't even touch each other, and they're like, and then when they do touch each other, they like freak out and like shoot to the other side of the cage. It's like weird.
Oh my gosh.
But like these snakes have like my buddy has pictures of them locked up like 5 years ago, right? Like these snakes are 10 years old now. They're born in 2015, right at probably a little after you had the Jeff Murray episode with Eric and Owen. I re-listened to that one so much. I haven't re-listened to it in a while, but I've re-listened to it probably like 15 times. Because it's like I could probably pick stuff out each time, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Although it was awesome that you guys finally got Jeff on the Boas
show. Yeah.
So that was great. I know I reached out to him. He might come on, but we'll see. Maybe I'll need your help having him on to pull some stuff out of him, but that'll be good.
No worries.
And if you want to do a boa shot at that point and you want Rob to take over for me, you can go ahead, because sometimes I don't know what the heck to talk about.
I don't know. Jeff's bred a bunch of cool stuff. Actually, he'd be cool for Smitty to have on just to talk about sand boas because Jeff seems to be going in a sand boa
Yeah, same boat
kick right
kick.
now
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I was talking to Smitty. I was like, maybe we should, me and him should start like some sort of boa thing, but like a sand boa. I don't know. It's too niche. You don't want to get too niche if you start a podcast. Nor do I have
Right.
time for that either. But yeah, it'd be. I don't know. It'd be neat to maybe do like make a boa spin off or something. I don't know. There's so many ideas I have and stuff, but
Absolutely. I like it.
time is all we have.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Rob, huge thank you for coming on. It was really great. Honestly, really interesting talk. I don't really know what we talked about during the whole time, but it was great. It was all over the place. So
Fabulous.
you want to let everybody know how to reach you, or if you've got anything for sale, feel free to plug it in too.
I don't have anything to sell. If people want to see photos of mostly field herping stuff, they can go to High Plains Herp on Instagram. Also, I'm trying to need to find and invest the time to update the website. But again, it's mostly going to be kind of field herping photos and things, but hopefully better quality that don't look like they're drawn in crayon, as the Instagram reductions can sometimes do. It's High Plains Herp or rhinorats.com. Should go to redirect to the same place. Again, not necessarily that much to see as of today, but I'll also put up, I think should be on there. I don't know whether it's accessible, visible, and clickable and whatever, but the article that I'd written on rhinos for the Herpiculture magazine, Smitty's Deal, that I've added some things to that and whatever, and I think either my intention is to have that available, or it is maybe that people can click to. So work that needs to come, maybe in the future, those things will be there, but that's about it.
Awesome. And for everybody listening to Reptile Rejects, today we released the Eric Burke episode that we recorded last week. And if you're listening to it now, thanks for joining, guys. It will only appear on the podcast next week because we tend to be a week late. If you guys want to reach Michael Gillian on Facebook and Instagram. What is it? Now?
Well, just Reptile Rejects.
There
It
you
goes
go.
to my Instagram.
All right.
Like I get it all.
All right. So Reptile Rejects on Instagram. Everybody, please click the little subscribe button, the likes, all that kind of crap. It all helps. We appreciate you guys logging on. And Rob, again, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. And to everybody, have a good night.